Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy. Welcome back, Lights Out Podcast. Very excited tonight. My favorite part, everybody's favorite part of what we do, the deep dive. Yes, we got deep dive time. And this is, especially to me. We're going into another guy like myself, an old school guy, a guy who started back in the 90s, man. So we're a real fighter. And not only a real fighter, but a real Indiana fighter. I know it seems like we're partial to these guys, and we are, so deal with it. Very happy to have legend of the sport, Mr. Aaron Riley. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well, Chris. It's good to be here with you all tonight.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Ain't seen you in a while, so
Chris,
I don't see anybody, though. All I see is these two guys.
So, Chris, are we considering Evansville, Indiana? I mean, are we going to say it's Kentucky?
You ask Aaron, he's from there. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's Kentucky, bro. You know what I'm saying?
You got to ask more of a native from that area. I don't know.
So, Aaron,
it sounds like the guy from Chicago is dishing out some disrespect there.
He got you,
Aaron is from Tell City, to be clear about
Tell
things.
City.
That is truth.
Well, the guy from Chicago has got about 5 hours of distance between him and Aaron Riley, and I'm more than comfortable talking a lot of smack from this, my apartment.
All I know is I had one fight in Tell City, and this dislocated, separated shoulders from that. So I don't want to go back to your place, man. I didn't have good memories there.
So
you had an awesome finish that night, though, if I remember right.
I appreciate it, but I might have won the battle, but he won the war. It was 20 years later, and I'm still this.
So Aaron, just kind of like a heads up, and we're going to kind of take a surgical view of your career. And Chris, I, and Miguel, we're all historians. And Chris, I, and Miguel, before this podcast even existed, we'd all nerd out with this little trivia, and the conversations would go down pathways that most people wouldn't talk about. But that's what kind of interested us, which is why Miguel and I are using our friendship with Chris to take up more time with yourself that we would normally not be able to afford.
to literally lure people on.
Yes. Yeah.
Chris is fun. Chris is like
you guys have a well-oiled machine here because you're pulling people in. Here I am. So.
So we'll start with what I like to do with your early fights is I like to kind of listen to the commentary. And they mentioned that you're a Golden Gloves champion. Were you Golden Gloves novice or advanced for the state of Indiana?
Okay, yeah. That's funny because that actually came a little later in my MMA career. I mean, I had already had, 5 or 6 fights before I started getting into Golden Gloves. But yeah, I boxed in the novice division. I boxed in novice division. It was a boxing club. It was weird. It was out of Kentucky, but it was associated with an Indiana club. So somehow or another, we were able to we were all like kind of lumped together as an Indiana club. It worked for us. And I boxed Golden Gloves in 1999. I won Golden Gloves that was my senior year in high school. And it was awesome, man. I won 165 novice class Indiana Golden Gloves state title that year.
Now, and that doesn't hurt being in high school and being a Golden Gloves champ. That probably makes you kind of the big deal there, does it not?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely I got a little respect, I would say, for sure. Yeah.
So the key thing that I took away from what you just said was you were a senior in high school, but you had a bunch of fights up until that point, and you were well seasoned fighter before you even entered Golden Gloves in terms of MMA.
Let me just jump in here and mention that this podcast is also an official 50 Fight Club member podcast here.
There it is.
This guy doesn't have official 50 fights on Sherdog, but trust me, he's got 50 fights. So anyway, take it away, bro.
So you were southpaw. You had phenomenal cardio. Those were the two things that I can honestly say that I've taken away from watching the totality of your career, but that cardio was even like as your beginning fights, which I think you were 16 years old when you made your professional debut for Hook and Shoot. How does that happen? How do you meet Jeff Osborne? How do you convince your parents in order to fight for Jeff as a 16-year-old child?
Yeah, so let's see. Here's like the quick synopsis, I guess. So I see UFC as a 12-year-old kid. I would read Black Belt magazine, the whole thing. That's how I became aware of UFC, was Black Belt magazine. I tune in, I watch them. I was doing judo at the time. I had started out with Taekwondo, like every other kid in America. Taekwondo was really big in like the early 90s, I would say. Like the 90s was like that was the in martial art, whatever. I started with that. I moved into judo, see ads for UFC, watch the first UFC. And then after I see it, I just decide, hey, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I mean, I'm 12 and I decide this. It's just like, bang, that is my calling in life. I just, right then and there. Let's see. And then I find out about Hook and Shoot. I hear about Hook and Shoot. There was a kid at my school that was just completely wild about pro wrestling. He actually went and watched the first Hook and Shoot. And then I see him at school and he's giving me this whole rundown. He shows me the program from the first Hook and Shoot. And I was like, holy hell, this is people that actually fought in UFC as alternates and some different things. I think maybe Gary Myers was maybe in the very first Hook and Shoot too. I can't remember. Yeah. So there were some guys who I recognized them from earlier fighting events that were on pay-per-view at that time. And here I am like a sophomore in high school, I think freshman in high school, and I'm seeing this. I'm like, wow, this show out of like Boonville or Evansville, this Hook and Shoot show, it's really like doing big things, or they're on the map. They're getting people from pay-per-view that are fighting on this show. So I let's see. I mean, I've become aware of Hook and Shoot. I go to a grappling match that's taking place in Evansville, and I get beat by 1 point in the grappling match by a guy that's out of Scott Sullivan's kickboxing and MMA gym, and that infuriated me. That just ate me alive, man. I'm like a 14-year-old kid, 14 or 15-year-old kid, and I got beat by an adult, but it just burns me, man. So I joined Scott's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, and that's where I meet Jeff Osborne and find out more that Hook and Shoot is promoted out of Evansville. And it's like, oh wow, I've got to get into this Hook and Shoot show.
Okay.
So a little historian touch. May 11th, 1996 is the first Hook and Shoot. So it did feature Gary Myers taking on Nick Starks in the main event. I think one of the UFC guys that you may be referring to that also fought on the shows from the early days was JZ Calvalcante.
JZ, yeah.
So that's a little bit of the wrap up. But yeah, they're starting to throw those types of names around. And Jeff, that first Hook and Shoot was in a bar. And from there, they moved to the wood paneled room, so they were moving on up from the very beginning.
I love it. So were your parents real apprehensive initially in regards to your fighting for Jeff?
You know what? My mom and dad were like, they had split up a little while before this, like they were divorced. But it was funny. My dad was like more apprehensive. My mom was just like, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, she just didn't have a problem with it at all. And then looking back on it years later,
that's a hard woman, man.
Yeah, dude. Like she used to train too. She used to do judo, and she used to train. And I mean, man, my mom, when I first went to Scott Sullivan's, she saw the grappling and was just like, "Hey, that cool. I think that'd be fun too. I know some judo, so she just kind of, I think she just jumped out there and started grappling with people. She was not afraid. I mean, I think all my fighting spirit, like a lot of it comes from my mom, man. She's kind of fearless.
That's awesome. So in your first fight, you actually have a heel hook submission victory over Chris Malgary.
Malgary, I think. Malgary, I believe is how they say it.
Malgary. So heel hook isn't something that is easily learned. Like, you're not going to learn that off of VHS tapes. Where were you training jiu-jitsu?
Well, I was training at Scott Sullivan's, but
Okay.
when I got the submission on Malgary, here's the whole thing with that. I had wrestling shoes on, and he was attempting a heel hook on me. We kind of got in a battle of legs. Now he started trying to heel hook me, and I didn't know a lot about grappling, but I knew that was way dangerous because I had wrestling shoes on. He was getting a heel hook on me, and I just grabbed him in like a straight leg lock. And still to this day, I'm not quite sure how it happened. I did the legs, like it was just like a straight Ken Shamrock style leg lock. And man, I just pulled it with all my might. And I like physically, like I just kind of broke his like shin bone or dislocated his knee.
Dang.
And I don't know how I did it because I just grabbed it and pulled it as hard as I could because I was scared to death he was going to trash my knee. And then I ended up trashing his leg before he trashed my knee. So it was just crazy. And I was in shock because I was 16 and, this dude, I think, was probably like 24, 25, and him and a guy named Sam Wells, I think they might even have their own gym. And I was freaked out. When I was warming up backstage, I'm watching these guys. Those two came together and they're training together. I had like one of my friends from high school and another guy that I boxed with, and they were my corner men. And then they were just like, hey, man, go out there and give them hell. That was basically their corner advice. And I see these guys warming up and I'm like, man, they're pummeling. I didn't even know what pummeling was really.
Wow.
They're doing all this stuff and it was freaking me out. So I was like, oh, wow, I've got a big fight on my hands. And then this guy's trying to heel hook me. I didn't know much, but I'd been watching instructional videotapes. I was training myself kind of through instructional videotapes and the little bit of judo I knew and a little bit of boxing that I was like kind of work. I really didn't know what was going on in the fight. I knew he was trying to heel hook me. I grabbed him, wrenched on his leg as hard as I could, and just kind of popped it. So
remember what year was this? What year was this?
1997. This was July 18th, July 19th, July 17th, 18th, 19th, 1997 is right in there.
Incidentally, that was the first hook and shoot I ever attended.
Oh, you were at that hook and shoot, Miguel? I didn't realize you were actually at that show.
Yeah, I bought a hotel room. I worked out a deal with Jeff where I was going to take pictures and stuff like that, and I killed 10 crickets in that hotel room. So
it was a classy place.
Yeah, it was an Evansville Deluxe, man. So
like it.
Hey, there's nothing worse than you're warming up and your corner's over there going, man, I'm glad I'm not fighting that guy. Go out there and try hard, son of a.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but Aaron, I had one of those experiences at one of your fights too. Was when you fought Yves Edwards in Texas.
Yeah.
Yves was warming up downstairs in like what was like a kind of cavernous building and stuff, and he's kicking the side pad, and we all know Yves Edwards now. The kid can kick a little, right? And the sound resonated throughout, like you could hear it throughout the whole arena. And it was like, what the hell is that sound? And it was Yves Edwards warming up. I was like, oh shit.
Well,
so anyway, sorry, maybe you didn't notice, but I did. Yeah, go, Mike.
So that night, it was actually a tournament where you lost by knee bar to Mario Roberto.
Right.
Was he your instructor?
It's weird, sort of, because I had been training at Scott Sullivan's like jiu-jitsu gym about a month and a half before this hook and shoot event happened. And I guess Mario was like Scott's instructor. He would fly over from Brazil like twice a year, I think, something like twice a year, and stay for like a month at a time. And he was Scott's instructor. So it was kind of a strange thing, I guess, looking back on it. Maybe I should have just asked Jeff to put me like a single fight in the hook and shoot event. But Jeff, I don't know how it worked out, how it did. Jeff ended up putting me in the 8-man tournament. Mario was part of the 8-man tournament. And of course, nobody in the gym wanted to corner me because, Mario was like the it guy, man. I mean, and cornering me against him, it's like, come on. So that's why I really just had like people from my hometown as corner people,
Wow.
Yeah, that for a little bit of reference, Scott Sullivan was a guy probably, like 10 years ahead of his time. He was a guy who back then had gotten a few fights in Japan. I don't know if it was Pancrase he was associated, but what he was best known for was a sport called shoot box or kickbox or shoot box.
Yeah, shoot boxing.
And what it is basically it's kickboxing with takedowns. And after a takedown, they stand you back up. And he went over there and like won a fight that he wasn't supposed to win. And, from there, you have that professionalism of going to Japan and stuff. And that's where you're bringing in instructors to Evansville and stuff from Brazil and stuff. So, you're talking about a guy who's ahead of his time. He faded out a little bit in the early days and stuff like that. But in the early days, it was a beacon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to fast forward to your 8th fight now. And I don't think you've graduated high school at this point, or if you did, it was just after it. Okay. It was in Texas, and you fought Tony Aponte. I'm assuming that was your first plane ticket to a fighting event.
It was, and it was about a week after I graduated high school. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Tony Aponte, for those that don't know, he is a revered trainer today, and he was one of, I think he was one of Royce's black belts, I believe. And Tito Ortiz was the referee that day.
He was.
So you've had a couple, I mean, we're going to get into that. You've had some awesome cornermen. And like I've taken notes on the most that I could find. How did you line that fight up? And you walked into Tony Aponte's hometown and you walked out with your hand raised in a very close fight.
Sorry, I had a little bit of interference here. You said, how did I line that fight up and what else?
And you also walked into Tony Aponte's backyard because that crowd was like rabid for him, and you somehow got your hand raised that night. And Tony is very accomplished.
Yeah, he is. Jeff kind of would get offers for fights, and then he would schedule me for fights. He would ask me, "Hey, would you want to do this one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, that was the first time I flew. That was the first time I was ever out of like kind of the tri-state area of Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois. I mean, so it was a major, it was like a major change. But I mean, but at the same time, it's the same thing as always. Climb into a ring, take care of business. So I was up for the challenge. I was like, yeah, sure, Jeff, let's go. It was he was on the card that night as well. That was when I first became aware of Yves Edwards.
Yves Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, because he matched up against some poor guy and caught him in a tie clinch, kneed his teeth out. They fell out on the ground. Tito got like an empty beer cup. He put the guy's teeth in the beer cup and then kind of handed the cup to him after the fight. And it's kind of like, hey, man, thanks for coming out kind of thing,
Your parting gift.
Yeah.
So the change of environment didn't bother you at all?
No, I mean, it really didn't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I was just too much of a, I don't know, like just a young kid that just, I was just loving every minute of it. I was just like, hey, man, it's a ring. I'm just going to go down there and jump in it and do my thing. I don't know. Maybe I was just too dumb and it was just super confident. I don't know. I just didn't worry about it. I was just ready to go.
Now, what belt were you at that time? Because obviously Tony at that time was very accomplished in jiu-jitsu.
Maybe a blue belt. I mean, I don't even know, honestly. I didn't train in a traditional jiu-jitsu setting. I mean, the first couple of years was just a hodgepodge of just, I mean, I had my judo background, which I trained in judo for about 3 years. I did Indiana State Games for judo twice and won those. I mean, But like, it was weird. Now, because in my early MMA career, it was kind of like a mixture of the judo, the instructional videotapes, and then like a smattering of jiu-jitsu training from Scott Sullivan before his gym closed. I picked up kickboxing and I was doing high school wrestling. It was all just kind of, like I said, like kind of a mixture of stuff. It wasn't like, and then when I don't even know if I had a ranking in jiu-jitsu when I fought Tony Torres. I may have gotten it like after that. I mean, if I did, I was a blue belt.
Yeah, the thing about, like, when you look at your record, you can sit here and go, oh, standout fight. When I saw Tony Torres Aponte, when I saw that name, I'm like, whoa, because he's got a real big gym in Texas, and he's still very relevant even today. So that to me, like, that's a big win. He was a black belt. You weren't. Probably outside of Mario Roberto in your second fight at 16, this was your first true test in terms of upper echelon guys in jiu-jitsu, in a fight situation. And, you persevered in his hometown, which there's no way that could have been easy.
How did that fight go? Can you recount it? How did it go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can remember, like, I mean, he was definitely a super solid opponent. He had this was Pancras style with the palm striking. So, we weren't with close fists, but I mean, he had some good striking. We did hit the mat pretty early on in the fight, and I believe he was going to heel hook me as well. I kind of defended well. I was able to get back up on my feet because I did know about his jiu-jitsu background. I did know he was an accomplished jiu-jitsu guy. So, of course, my strategy was pretty much just to keep him standing. Like, I think it kind of turned the tide because, again, that cardio kind of came into play. I mean, here I am, an 18-year-old kid, and I think he was – I don't know exactly how old Tony was at that point. He was – he had some age on me, maybe 10 or 12 years. I mean, he was a little older than me. So I think he started to wear down, and I just felt it. Like, I just sensed it. Maybe that was, I don't know. That was maybe a little bit of fight maturity, like that ahead of my time even. I kind of sensed him slowing down. So I started like kind of ratcheting up my pressure and my pace. And I remember catching him with some good palm strikes and kind of rattling him. And I threw him down or was off a takedown, and I kind of got a knee ride, and I gave him a super solid like palm strike to the face from a knee ride position. And I got him really good. And then he reached up and distinctly tapped my leg twice. And then like right as I was hitting him the second time. So I felt those taps. And then I back away from him. I mean, I'm done. He tapped. And then Tito jumps in because he didn't really see the finish. Tito's like, oh, kind of like keep going type of thing. And then I'm like, oh my, like, did you not see it? Like that's what's running through my mind. I'm like, did you not see that? And then I look at Tito and I said, he tapped. And then Tito like looks down at him and says, did you tap? And I'm getting in position because I'm getting ready to run up and football kick him. I was going to soccer on him. If he said he didn't tap, I was going to kick him right in the head. But he said, yeah, I tapped. You can see the video. If you see a video of it, he said he's really frustrated in the face. And he just goes, yeah, I tapped. And then Tito was like, oh, okay, I didn't see it. And then then they stopped. But yeah, I mean, I was just kind of like, oh, no, dude, don't say you tap. But he had honor and he said, yeah, I tapped. And so, we chatted. Dude, he was a super, super tough fight.
Yeah, he, I agree. And that crowd, Chris, you got to hear that crowd. Like, I'm surprised you got out of there without getting in a few fist fights, Aaron. Honestly, he had a lot of people there.
He had a lot of students that were there, I think. I spoke to one of the people that was a corner man for him that night. I met up with the guy in Seattle, like 3 or 4 years later or something. He was like, man, we just couldn't believe that. We just couldn't believe that happened. And like, they said they brought down like 100 people from Houston. I think he was like from Houston or something. And then they had all these people drive down to watch. I think probably, like 50% of the crowd was there for him. So
100%. So your 12th fight, we interviewed Steve Berger yesterday, and the one promoter that honestly looked out for Steve consistently was a guy named Brian Madden. And your 12th recorded fight, obviously it might be different. Reality might be different, is against a future UFC veteran, CJ Fernandez, where you walked away with a draw in CJ's hometown.
Right.
Okay. How does that fight play out? How do you somehow finagle a draw?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Before the fight, they said, okay, hey, look, guys, it's going to be like a 15-minute fight. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to go to a decision, or do you want to just be declared a draw if there's no decisive winner? And then CJ and I just kind of both looked at each other. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm planning to finish. I mean, back in those days, I'm like, I'm ready. I'm finishing every fight. So I'm just thinking to myself, well, I just said, okay, if it goes to time limit, let's just call it a draw. That I said that. And then CJ just looked at me and was like, yeah, that's cool. We'll just do that. So that was kind of how that even became like an issue anyway, because I think at that point they were doing different things. I mean, it was like, I don't know why they asked us that, but they did. And I just said, hey, if there's no decisive winner, we'll just call it a draw. So we both agreed to that.
And now, was that because you were in his backyard?
That's why that, and I felt that I had the ability to finish the fight. I mean, I definitely was like, well, I'm going to end it. In my mind, it's like, well, I'm going to finish the fight anyway. So we don't got to worry about a draw. That's the confidence of, an 18-year-old kid.
But the 18-year-old kid, Miguel, we're not able to hear you. We see your lips moving, but you're muted. But the thing with that also is that that's a very seasoned move. Yeah. And somebody at 18, I mean, that's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? Especially from a small town, small town Indiana, you're handling yourself much wiser than your age and location were at that point in your life.
All I could say was I tried to be a pretty good student of the game. And, I was around Jeff and Miguel a lot. So I picked up a lot of, I guess, nuggets of wisdom or knowledge and, some pretty crazy stories too. So I don't know. Just
how'd the fight go with CJ? How did you feel like it went?
I felt like, man, I've gone back and watched it a couple times. I felt like I was kind of wearing him down as well.
He's a fast starter.
Yeah, definitely. Like he was kind of being able to kind of impose his game plan a little bit in the beginning with some takedowns and whatnot. But I kind of felt like he started to slow down and I started to get stronger. And I mean, I felt like had it gone to a decision and the judging was fair, I'm not saying they had improper judging or anything. I'm just saying, but if people were unbiased judging, I felt like I would have won the fight. I mean, like thinking back on it and the last time I saw the fight. So maybe I should have just opted to have that, but whatever.
It wasn't worth the risk.
Hometown, I wouldn't. Huh?
Not worth the risk. No way.
No, not in somebody's hometown. You've been homered too many times.
Well, here the key there is, was that Brian Madden the promoter?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's because, hey, if you get both guys to agree to draw, the pocket, the win money stays in his pocket. So, little secret for you guys.
You probably love that.
It's sad we figured that out now, not back then, right? But that's the bottom line is if they don't have to give it out, right? And Aaron was talking about moments that Tony Torres fight was on the border, right? Was that Laredo? Yeah, and Tito was there. John Lober,
right? Yeah, John. That was an interesting night. I'm sure Jeff told you about all there was there was a pro wrestler that was fighting Renken that ended up choking Renken with his wristband. I mean, it was like the most blatant thing I've ever seen. The dude just grabs his wristband, stretches it out, wraps it around Renken's neck twice, and he's just choking the piss out of him. I mean, this was a crazy event, man. Yeah, no, it definitely. I remember a story about you in a shiny shirt that I don't know how much you want to share, but. Yeah, Lober, Tito,
you're talking about bad boys from the early days and stuff. And he did have access, like Aaron, because being mentored by Jeff and later on, me helping out, he always was a guy like that, had access to a lot of, Lober was a guy with historic fights, man,
Yeah.
So totally.
He was the first guy that beat Frank Shamrock.
Yeah. And when he gets his leg snapped in the pancrase ring, the Japanese guy snaps his leg and he's looking at the ref with the guy's leg broken, and Lober wants to continue. I mean, come on, man. The guy's a classic. and a real dude. Anyway, go, John. Mike.
So your 14th fight, as Miguel had talked about earlier, was on Hook and Shoot again. Like you and Jeff Osborne, I don't know if Jeff was trying to get you killed or he loved you, but you definitely were like number one on his to-call list, and he put you up against Yves Edwards. Is that the first time you ever got a broken jaw? Because I know that's kind of a reoccurring theme later on in your career, but was that the first time?
No. I didn't get a broken jaw in that fight. It's crazy, man. It's funny because I've heard Yves be on on Rogan's podcast. And each time they talk about it, it's just like gets just worse and worse. It's just like, and then you were hitting him and his face fell off and his eyes were swinging. It's just like each time they talk about it, man, it gets worse. But no, what happened? Like I fought Yves in October 2nd, 1999, in Wichita Falls, Texas Heat. He cut my chin. It was Pancrase rules match. He won. He took my title. He won. We rematched the second time, July 14, 2001, Evansville. Now that fight, Yves caught me with an uppercut. Okay. He was laying a bunch of pressure on me in a corner and I'm blocking, I'm moving, I'm trying to get out of the way of everything. I kind of ducked down. He sends an uppercut up through the center. He hit me right here not in the chin. He hit me right above it. And he hit me and he broke my palate. He broke my lower palate and my four bottom teeth. It was weird, man. They moved back in a section, like all four teeth. Like the bone broke, like a tiny bit of the bone broke, and four teeth just moved back like, a quarter inch or something. It was really. And the funny part about this was my first fight back out of action for a while. And Matt Hume is my corner man. Okay. So I walked back to the corner. That happened in the second round. I still had one more round.
Wait, now is this the rematch or is this the first fight?
Rematch. This is the rematch. Right. This is closed fist MMA style. I believe that was actually a Shudo rules match, possibly. So they had a little bit of different, like no elbows type of thing if it was Shudo. But so he pops me with that. I go back to the corner. And then I tell Matt, oh man, my mouth's messed up. My teeth are moved back. And then Roman Reutberg was a popular kickboxer at the time. He was training with Maurice Smith. He's a dentist as well. And then Matt looks at my teeth and then he just goes, don't worry about it. Roman will fix them. And he slaps my face and he's pushed me back out. And I was like, well, okay. I guess I got to go back out there. I mean, so I just bite down on my mouthpiece, not too hard with those messed up teeth. And I just get back out there, man, and go after it for a whole nother round.
That's tough.
You got to respect the coach who knew right away that he was going to need dental help.
Hey, we got a dentist. You're fine.
You got it covered.
I remember those fights. He's selling himself short too, because the first time he goes, if you remember some of what he's talking about in time sequence, he had gone to Texas and beaten a guy with a rep, and that was Tony. And seen Yves there, and now he's going back to Texas to fight Yves under, Pancrase rules and stuff down there, loses the belt, loses the decision, comes back to Evansville with a new, coach, a world-class coach to do the rematch. And to be honest with you, that was, we already had the Abu Dhabi relationship, but we didn't have any real sponsors and stuff. And Jeff really did, maybe the premier job he had done promoting that fight too. It had everybody pumped up, and, it was definitely like a main event. You could have done it in the UFC. Could have been there.
Yeah, that was it. I guess, Miguel, you said that Dan Lambert, I know that you spoke to him after I was injured, and he kind of helped us with some of the he kind of helped with some of the billing and things on that. And he said, man, if I got to watch a fight of that caliber, then dude, I don't have a problem, you know, or something along those lines, if I'm not mistaken. Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Chris had an emergency bill that was a couple $100 for the shoulder. The rest, you know, I guess his insurance covered it because I didn't get another bill, right? But I paid $400 for that. There was a level that if the medical needs got to be too much and I couldn't handle it, and it came very shortly after, about $400 or $500, right? But we called Papa Dan, you know what I mean? And so you needed some help there.
Yeah, the dental stuff. I think that starts at about $500.
It's painful.
Yeah, Dan Lambert. I almost hate to tell stories about his kindness because all it does is just it opens him up to people that are just kind of like predatory in their needs. Because that guy,
you know, I'll be honest with you, he's very obviously aware of those types of people as well. And if you notice the types of stories that we share, it's almost inevitably something like this: him behind the scenes, helping out.
Never even asking for a thank you. Never even asking for it.
You know, helping out either a competitor or directly, or a promoter, you know, screwed something up and is the competitors are gonna suffer, so he kind of covers them, you know, and that's basically it. He did what he wasn't gonna get suckered by anybody, I don't think, but it always shows up like that, and it was very grateful because, you know, like I said, you had a UFC level fight happening in a war memorial in Indiana, and you know, there was, you know, the sport was about to get big. It wasn't big. This was July of 2001. Right away, you know, Zoof is brand new there. You know, they if they had the UFC, it had only been for that from the beginning of that year, right? So
yeah, they think Zuffa took over like January of 01 or something. They were like in the Meadowlands or whatever. They were in Jersey for that opener and all that. They had Zuffa just bought out from SEG in like 01, I believe. Yeah.
Anyway, Mike, take it away. Take us back.
Yeah. You know, and this is where things kind of get a little murky in your career. Like, you know, we always talk about like 50 fight veterans. Like, you got to get conned or come up on a con. You got to get stiffed by a promoter. You know, medical bills that are beyond your means. Like, those are all like benchmarks that you have to hit in order to like kind of get respect from like the MMA brethren. You know what I mean? Like the guys that really put the miles on their car. So, and this is me foreshadowing, I might be wrong. So Aaron takes a flight to Hawaii, and I think it's one of TJ Thompson's cards. And I'm assuming whoever it is you were fighting, something happened, and they switched the bout because you fought Falianco Vitale with a 30-pound weight difference.
Yeah. What? Okay. We're jumping back like in chronology here a little bit. That fight happened October of '99. That was after.
Right
that
after
was actually
the
a few weeks. That was like a few weeks after the Yves Edwards fight in Texas.
Yes. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He went back to the first Yves Edwards fight. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna cover. Okay. There's a lot in between there we got to cover. So
yeah, definitely.
Is there an opponent switch there?
Yeah, I think I was supposed to fight Cheyenne Patakin, maybe. I mean, okay, this one actually was not a TJ Thompson production. It was something else. It was called Rage in the Cage, I think was the name of the event. TJ was doing Super Brawls. And I always wanted to get on Super Brawl, but whatever it was, I don't know. I think he and Jeff maybe, well, I mean, obviously, you know, just economically, it's way cheaper to just bring people, you know, like from like the Hawaiian fighters fight Hawaiian fighters, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So, you know, I always wanted to fight on Super Brawl, but I could never quite get in Super Brawl. I think Osborne put this together through, it was some kind of a connection of people knowing people and what, I don't know. But anyhow, I got booked to fight on the show. I believe originally it was like Cheyenne Patakin, a lighter weight, you know, Hawaiian fighter. Like, you know, I don't remember Cheyenne's record. I remember him being kind of like a mid-tier. I remember, I mean, he wasn't like one of their most well-known world beater guys from Hawaii at the time. And I was just like, yeah, dude, I mean, I'm up for the fight. That sounds good. And then I think like the day before we left on the flight, I mean, you're locked and loaded at this point the day before. And they're like, oh, wait, I think Cheyenne's out. We'll find a replacement, though. Come on over. And we're like, well, I mean, it's Hawaii, and I've always wanted to fight in Hawaii, so we're going. And then, yeah, by the time that, we landed in Hawaii, yeah, my opponent had grown from like a 165-pound fighter to like a 200-pound fighter. Because, I went from Cheyenne Padigan to Nico Vitale, and this was Nico's first MMA fight, okay? I mean, like at least on record or whatever that I know of. Now, I guess Nico was part of like an indoor like football league or something. I mean, Nico is ferociously athletic. I mean, this guy is like
huge tickets.
I see him at the weigh-in.
Wow.
And I mean, that's the first time I even see him. I see him at the weigh-in, and it's like, oh, okay, well, like this guy's, I mean, he looks like a bodybuilder, and he's in great shape. It's like, well, whatever, man. I mean, like, but they said it was his first MMA fight. So it's like, well, I know he's bigger than me, whatever. I've got experience. I'll just kind of use that. It's like, I'm already locked and loaded. So I'm ready to do the fight anyway. So anyway, we go into this fight, and, I probably shouldn't have necessarily been taking such another tough fight, like 2 or 3 weeks after the Yves Edwards fight, but I was just trying to fight as much as I could back then. So I think I throw a kick maybe, and he takes me down off the kick. I'm trying to work submissions from my back. He's doing a good job defending them, and he lands some pretty strong punches from on top. And the fact that he was about 2 weight classes above me, I mean, that really gave him a little extra pop in those punches. Go Korshavician was the ref for that fight. He ends up jumping in and stopping it. I mean, like in retrospect, it's probably a good stoppage. I mean, I was pissed at the time. I don't know. I mean, like this is like, we're talking like 20 years ago, but yeah, he landed some solid punches, and, they rattled me a bit. So, I don't know, but yeah, that was a very tough fight. That was kind of a bit of a screw job. Cause I mean, why are you going to, well, I know why, because they're trying to put over their boy. I mean, no, he was kind of like, he was a Hawaiian fighter. They're looking to make a name off of me, beat me up and get him out there. And I mean, he did go far. He went to UFC. He fought Matt Lindland in that infamous fight where Lindland suplexes Vitale and knocks himself out. So, Vitale had a solid career.
Okay, now the real question is, do you think your original opponent even got hurt, or do you think Nico's opponent got hurt and they just did a bait and switch?
Well, probably just a bait and switch, or maybe they just knew that they were going to do that the whole time and they didn't care. I mean, that could have been the part of it too.
It could have been his teammate. Yeah, keep his weight low. It's possible. Did they adjust your pay in regards to it?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, like,
we're going to gain 30 pounds. It's the same pay them.
Yeah. Who cornered you?
What Aaron doesn't know is they gave Jeff $7,000 more.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. Yeah.
I'm only kidding.
Who was your corner at that point in time?
Jeff Osborne. Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised Jeff allowed that. I'm surprised.
Well, he was nervous, but Jeff was nervous no matter who I fought. So that was nothing new. I mean, he was always nervous when we went on the road. So
now you're talking about early history, and the problem with Jeff being there or me being there at that point is that, we're really kind of hinging the hook and shoot name on the fighter. And that's, what was going on there. So that's kind of why you can't show up in Hawaii for a vacation and not fight. You know what I mean? It's like, what they pay the plane tickets for? I had that happen in Brazil where we sent Jeff as the corner man for Travis Fulton, and Fulton no-showed. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to pay for a plane ticket there. I don't think Sergio charged me for it, but he was like, what did I do? Pay for a vacation for Jeff? So yeah, it's a touchy situation,
Well, the strange thing is, like I met, it's Hawaii. Obviously, TJ's kind of famous for Hawaii. You're saying that he had no involvement in the show. Meanwhile, he turns up at your next fight, which is a WEF title fight when you're 19 years old against Colin O'Rourke. and TJ was the ring announcer. So I just kind of figured, man, you do me this solid, I'll do you one, down the road. But if you're saying that's not how it happened, it's just kind of a weird set of circumstance surrounding it.
Yeah, because I mean, Osborne got me on WEF. I guess he knew Jamie Levine was just, he was promoting that event. I don't know, Miguel, maybe I mean, I thought Jeff maybe went to that WEF before that one. Maybe he didn't. I think it was like in Louisiana, Stomp on the Swamp, I think it was called. That was, I think, when WEF kind of started to get big, was, I think, the 7th WEF, because I believe they had Minotauro fought on that one against a guy from Militich's gym, I think. There were a couple of pretty good names on WEF
and stuff. Yeah, the one you fought in Atlanta. Yeah, I think what you're looking at there is you're looking at the rise of Jamie Levine, to be quite honest with you. So,
how was it dealing with Jamie?
Because really fast to recap. So he goes out and he's fighting in Hawaii for whatever promotion that is and stuff like that. Now he comes back, he runs into TJ, the Hawaiian promoter, in Atlanta, because it's Levine paying for plane tickets and doing the politicking of bringing TJ in, bringing Monty in, bringing me in, et cetera, et cetera.
How was your experience with Jamie Levine?
Me personally, I mean, I got along with Jamie great, but I mean, Jeff, I guess, handled most of the contract negotiation type stuff. I mean, Jeff talked to him about, whatever my contract would be. And up to that point, I guess it was the most that I had made, which, what wasn't a lot, but at that time, it was, Chris knows what I'm talking about, those early days,
It's embarrassing, but it's true.
Yeah. That's why I'm not going to say how much it was. But,
so when you fought Colin, were you aware that he was like one of Renzo Gracie's top students?
I knew he was one of Renzo's students, but again, I had heard he didn't have like a lot of MMA experience, or he was making his debut, I think, as well. And he had done some damage in Naga. He was really strong grappler, competing. But to me, it was, I just told myself, well, hey, jiu-jitsu matches aren't MMA, so I'm going to smash him. I mean, that was my mindset. I'd had the setbacks with Yves, and I had the setback with Nico Vitale, and I had really dedicated myself and trained hard for, because I got this fight scheduled in the new year, and I was like, okay, look, I'm going to get very serious here, train my butt off, and I'm going to be ready to go for this event. And I didn't do any other, I was coming off two back-to-back losses, and I really committed myself to training hard, and I was really ready to come in there and make a statement. So, I was pretty committed to I didn't care who they put in there. I was just ready to go.
Well, Chris, as we've discussed on this podcast dozens of times, we usually only discuss like the receiving end of the screw job. And this is me forecasting here. I believe this is on the giving end of the screw job, because Colin, as you had stated, it's a WEF title fight. So they're going to put a title on somebody that, doesn't have any fights left. That could have been Renzo politicking at the time. MMA was still young, but your record, like when you're walking out, it shows your name and it says 3-0.
Yeah.
And then when they announce you as 11 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw.
Okay.
At this point, neither of those are correct. And even if you add them together, they're not right.
Yeah.
So do you think that they may have been unaware of how much experience you had going into this fight?
No clue. I mean, believe me, I've seen replays of that fight, and I've caught that. And the funny thing is, the guys in the booth were people I had trained with at Militich, because I went to Militich in Iowa for like a summer of 1999. I spent a good part of that, and actually trained at Militich to get ready for the Yves Edwards fight in October of '99. So I'd spent a decent amount, some time at Militich. And so those guys knew me. They knew that I had more fights than that. So, I don't know.
I think the way I think you hit it right on the head when you said it's always good to have a Renzo Gracie team group of people there debuting a guy. If you could get a debut guy a win, then you've got a gateway to having his guys on your card there. And I believe that would be what Levine was planning there. And I think it backfired on him in that O'Rourke was a little bigger and a little stronger than Aaron. And, you know, if you take a look at the weigh-ins and stuff, you may have been leaning on betting on Colin. I know a lot of people were, I remember a couple of people like Frank Mullis and people like that were very high on Colin before that fight. And, you know, Aaron put a stop to that with some experience and stuff. But I think they knew and had seen you fight and were more prepared than you could possibly have been with them.
Well, you know, Aaron, you also mentioned the broadcast booth had seen you train. The broadcast booth for that was Jay Adams and Frank Trigg.
Oh, for that event?
Yeah. Dude, they were talking about, it was in like Washington, D.C. They were talking about everything other than the fight. Dude. Like,
no. Yeah, you're talking about UWC.
I'm looking at WEF. It says WEF title online. Oh,
okay. Well, Frank Trigg was at a show. Frank Trigg was he did do the booth for a fight that I did in Washington, D.C., but for WEF, I was talking about when I fought O'Rourke in WEF. Now, UWC, I think.
You know what? I might be looking online, and it might be a little, because, dude, there's a lot of stuff that's not accurate. And, you know, based on, like, the totality of the information you've given us, like with dates and names and times, I have no doubt that you're correct, and the information that I procured from online is probably a little faulty. I mean, we're going back, you know, 2 decades here.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on that, but Colin Lane, it lists it as a WEF title fight.
Okay, yeah. I did fight for a WEF title fight, but like the booth I'm talking about, it was 4 guys. Wade Rome, I think, was one of them. There was a guy from Pat Miletich. There were 2 others. I can't. Stephen Quadros was in the booth that night.
Professors.
Yeah. They had a solid booth, but there were 4 guys, and that's kind of a lot.
Too many.
So they were kind of stumbling over each other when they were given the commentary.
Yeah, no, that definitely was not the Colin O'Rourke fight. That was Frank Trigg.
No. The other thing you got to consider, though, is that somebody may have repackaged it and had Trigg do that in the studio afterwards.
A good point.
And that could be very well why he sounds completely like he doesn't know what the fuck is going on during the fight.
Dude, like, they're talking about the Chicago Cubs. They're talking about, like, helicopters flying around. Meanwhile, you're going to war. And not a single, like, oh, yeah, look, you just landed a nice right punch. Anyway, the Chicago Cubs, dude, I don't know, man. I love Frank Trigg, but after that, he definitely shouldn't be in the announcer booth. Now, your corner for that fight was also Tito Ortiz.
That's right.
How is this a reoccurring theme happening with you and Tito?
We just kind of started to get to know each other a little bit. He first became aware of me of that fight in South Texas. He just became aware of me that fight in South Texas. I think, that was only the second time I had seen him, but I just said, hey man, you want to corner me for this fight? And he said, yeah, sure.
Was he there with somebody else?
Tito? Yeah, John Lewis. I think he was there with John Lewis. He was training with John Lewis at that time, and John Lewis fought Laverne Clark that night.
It's a hard fight.
Who won the fight?
Laverne won that fight on decision.
Laverne's a tough dude, man.
Did you ever go out and train with Tito with those guys?
I was trying to kind of coordinate that, but then I never ended up making it out there. I had my sights set on California because palm trees and bikinis, man. So I was all about trying to get out there, but I ended up going up to rainy Seattle instead. So I don't know how that worked out, but
how was it working out with Matt Hume?
Matt at that time, he was really had a great handle on mixed martial arts. On mixing martial arts. He had trained in everything individually. He had put it all together. He was there in the early stages. He was there in Pancras. He was, he put on, he had his own sanctioning body, his own event called like UFCF, I believe it was called. And he was promoting big fights way back in the mid to late 90s. So man, he really had a strong grasp of the idea and the, how mixed martial arts training should be approached. So that was kind of invaluable some of the time I spent up there.
How was his instruction?
It was good, but man, Matt was really like kind of old schoolish. Chris will probably know kind of where I'm going with some of the Pancras stuff. Man, Matt had this thing where when you came up to join his gym, he had an initiation. He didn't tell you this, but he would, like that old Ken Shamrock style stuff.
Oh yeah.
But see, Matt didn't make me do like 1,000 jumping jacks and 1,000 like he just beat the crap out of me one night. And I didn't know that this was coming at all, man. I didn't know this was coming at all. We got done training with just the regular class, and he just nonchalantly walks out on the mat and just goes, let's roll for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, okay. Because, I'm this young, dumb kid that's just ready to be a sponge and learn everything I can. And man, he just destroyed me. He was putting his knee in my face and just crunching my face. He just kept ripping my arm in a Kimura. And at one point, he just grabbed me with his bare hand and just started choking me. Yeah, just choking me till I almost passed out. Dude, he was like he was trying to kill me. I mean, like it was just unbelievable. And then after it was done, he probably did it for about 30 minutes. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I mean, I couldn't get away from him. He just pulverized me. And then the funny part was after he was done, I said, thanks. And shook his hand. And then I didn't know what else to do. I was just like, dude.
Probably, what's wrong with this kid?
Yeah.
Hey, I saw that actually in Japan when I was there at Pancrase. I was staying there and remember seeing Suzuki just going against these young guys and choking them, and they're kind of tapping, and he's not really letting go. He waits till they're almost out, and then he's pushing them around and get back up, and then he starts going right again. And I was kind of getting pissed. Like, you're going to kill these guys, man. I didn't really understand what was going on, but they only wanted the toughest people. And if you couldn't deal with that, you quit. And if you could, you became a tough fighter. That was a thought process. And there's something to be said for, but man, it's a different world. You can't do that stuff anymore.
Yo, there was a guy from Chicago that used to do that. His name was John Wayne Gacy.
It's a little different.
Yeah, a little different sport, but he definitely did that quite often, I might add.
Well, the thing that Aaron doesn't let you know is that, his day of training, so he's there, a sponge, trying to learn everything. And at that point, Hume had Barnett, Hallman, Salivary, and like his UFC frontline guys, Barnett was a UFC heavyweight champion. So that's who he trained with. So it's not like, you probably caught some lumps there too. And then you get Hume to beat you up, So I think only a little part of Matt really enjoys it. I think the other part is just philosophy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to comment either way. I'm not sure what that would it falls into. But Matt, I tell you what, like I wish like a classic Matt Hume t-shirt existed because I would 100% buy one. I'm a huge fan of what it is he does. I'm a big fan of that guy. Now, from this Colin O'Rourke fight, what I refer to as the Gotti Ward of the independent scene, like Samoa Joe and CM Punk, what they did on the independent scene takes place in your life. And that's back in Hook and Shoot with your guy, Jeff Osborne, you fight Steve Berger and just a war.
That's a good description of what happened. Yeah.
Did you expect that coming into that fight?
I mean, I expected him to come to fight hard, and looking back at it, I guess I just saw a clip of that fight the other night. I was kind of like going through videos the other night and showing someone a video. I mean, I've not watched that in a long time. And then I was like, wow, we're really kind of throwing a lot of punches in this fight. And I was like, wow, I guess this really was a good, tough fight. I mean, I just, I didn't really know what to expect going in. I mean, I knew all about his jiu-jitsu background. I didn't really, I mean, he was a Golden Gloves boxer as well. I didn't really,
I just kept that a secret.
Yeah.
For sure.
But so I didn't really expect it to be the war that it turned out to be, but once it started, I was committed. So, I just kind of kept going after it.
So were you a big ticket seller locally at that time?
Yeah. I mean, I felt like that, by that time, I think in 2000, I mean, like it was a slow process where more people were coming out and watching them. But yeah, I mean, like at that point, I would say, I was doing pretty well, bringing in a lot of people.
Now, why did you two never rematch?
I don't know. I mean, that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I mean, I was open for it. Okay. Well, look, yeah, here's what happened. That was my last fight before I went to AMC. Well, okay. I did a month of training at AMC in May of 2000. I think actually Miguel, fortunately Miguel had pulled some strings and he made it possible for me to go to Abu Dhabi after WEF. Right after WEF, I was able to go over to Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi Submission Wrestling Championships. And I kind of made that, I kind of like got to know Dennis Hallman a little bit and got to see how good Matt's guys had done in Abu Dhabi, even though they're predominantly an MMA gym, not a grappling gym, in my, opinion. And that fight happened right before I went out to Matt Hume, before I joined Matt Hume's AMC Pancration team. And after I did that Berger fight and went out to Matt said, you're not fighting pro again for a long time. We're going to round you out and make you a UFC world champion. So Matt pulled me out of competition for, I guess, like 11 months or something like that. It was quite a while before he let me get back in. That's maybe some of the reason why I never fought Steve Berger. It wasn't like it was like, oh, in 3 months or 6 months, like UFC, they do these rematches and trilogies like all the time. But that's why I didn't just rematch Berger 6 months later or something, because Matt wasn't having it. He said, that was my last fight before I joined AMC Kickboxing. So,
I don't want to embarrass Aaron, but when he says he went to Abu Dhabi, we had the opportunity to videotape that event, and it was the hook and shoot crew that had to do it. Jeff Osborne and myself kind of directing the thing. So we had to put together a team, and Aaron's official job was to take the battery guy, charge batteries to the camera guys throughout the show. So he was right around taking batteries there. Nice. But we got the job done. He got the experience and he got to be around. We met Ruben Asado that event, man. You know what I mean? It's like, God damn, So it served its purpose. So anyway, sorry, Mike, carry on.
No, it's okay. And do you think it was Shudo rules? So in that bout, I'm not a real big fan of Shudo rules, but I do understand them. I think a lot of the catches on the ground really never get called. And if they do get called, it's too much. Is a catch, it's a submission when you land the submission, not an almost submission. Do you think that standing 8 count in the second round may have helped prolong that fight?
It was, I caught Steve with a good punch. He kind of bounced back from it, but at the same time, the referee, Sean Brocknell, he was kind of jumping in to stop it. And then Steve kind of tackled him a little bit as he was coming back. I don't know how much the punch hurt him. I know it did have some effect. And, it's just speculation at this point. I'd like to think that I would have finished him after that. He'd like to, you just talked to him. You said the other day, I'm sure he was like, nah, that didn't hurt. I was fine. And I would have been fine. So, that's just the fighter and both of us saying, whatever. So, I really wish that it wasn't under Shudo rules, so we would have known what would have happened. But I definitely know I caught him with a good shot. But would I would have finished him? I like to
tough.
think so, but who knows?
You know, Berger is one of those guys, like, you know, by his 13th fight, he's got like 8 guys that have either going to be in the UFC or have already fought in the UFC. Like, his record is insane. Like, it's some people are like, oh man, I really like to fight. And then there's guys like yourself and Steve Berger where, no, man, like they get off fighting. There's something else going on here. There's something possibly wrong with these individuals by how much they really enjoy fighting. And you had mentioned you had a 11-month layoff in regards right after the Steve Berger fight because you had joined Matt Hume's gym. How did you support yourself for 11 months? Were you working?
I was living in Matt Hume's gym at the time. I was actually living in the gym, like banker style, I guess you know. And I just had money saved from all the fights from before. I just brought it up in a little envelope, and I just lived off of it for 11 months, man.
That's wild. That's wild, man. Good for you. Well, your 23rd fight is against Robbie Lawler at UFC 37.
He hits hard.
I agree with that statement. Yeah.
Well, what seriously now, at the time, you got nothing but props for the fight, deservedly so. You know, my friend, thank you. But and then the fight holds up because it's something you can still show people, and it becomes like a historic fight and stuff like that. But how do you look at it? You know, how do you fix that up? Because if you look at it, he's a 185 pounder that cuts to 170. And you're a 155 pounder that maybe should have been at 140, you know? Like, I mean, your heroics still may not get the props they deserve for that fight.
You always fought a little heavy. I agree with that.
Yeah. It was weird. I had never, in high school, I always kind of walked at about 170, and I always kind of wrestled at 171. I don't know. I guess I never really knew how to cut weight. I never had to cut weight. And I just never wanted to do it in a sense. So I just never did for the longest time. I mean, that fight kind of started. What's that?
You didn't have to. You were doing well while it was. So why cut weight?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you know, like, I don't know, because, I mean, I guess I was just taking that Frankie Edgar approach. Like, Frankie just walked around, and then, hell, he fought a weight class up, basically, and was just doing great. So it's like, why worry about it, you know, if things are going okay? I mean, I didn't win every single fight up to that point, but I felt like I was holding my own. So, you know, but let me tell you, after that fight, then I starting to have some considerations of, hey, maybe I should think about doing something different because this guy hits hard. He's very big. Yeah.
You know, like we had talked about this with Steve Berger like last night, and you know, both of your records are very intense. Like you really got to look at them so you give it the proper care. So generally, like I don't like doing back-to-back interviews like this because it needs time and love. And when I look at that Robbie Lawler fight, you fight Robbie Lawler at UFC 37.
Yeah.
And then Berger fights him at UFC 37.5. And it kind of tells me, and like this is me just assuming again, and obviously you're not supposed to do that, that mad genius of Jeff Osborne, like the powers that be at the UFC watched yours and Steve's fight, and they go, this is what we need here. Figure it out. So they said, okay, well, we got both participants. Let's just throw them at the same guy, Robbie Lawler, who at the time was a hot hand, obviously. And, they tried to mimic that brilliance that both you and Steve, kind of manufactured on the independent scene.
I think it was a nice dose for the national crowd of what people in Indiana already knew we were getting. And that extends itself to Chris, who also debuted. I think you made an earlier debut, right? You were in the UFC, like right around there.
Or SEG days.
Yeah. But you got back right around this time too, right? Right around the 37.
Yeah. I got back to fight Robbie Lawler, UFC 45.
Look at that. So look at that.
The 10-year anniversary. Yeah. So I mean, but
I think that's a lot of Indiana talent that they were using it
for Robbie Lawler.
There's a reason for that,
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, Aaron. Just knowing your reputation from like the Yves Edwards fights and the Steve Berger fight and the Robbie Lawler fight, I think it kind of made me. I liked the way people talked about you. You know what I mean? And it kind of made me want to change. Not, I'd say made me want to fight similar style, and made me think I don't care as much about. I mean. Don't get me wrong. I want to win every fight. Always wanted to win every fight, but there's a little bit more honor in going out there and just I want everybody talking about the fight. I want at the end of the day people to be like, dude, I don't care if he's on the card. I want to watch it. That was kind of the goal in the way. I want people to be like, damn, that dude can put on an entertaining fight. So you were one of the guys I used to think about when I hear stuff like that, and it kind of made me want to fight like that as well. So really pretty cool to have you on here, brother. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, hey, dude, I mean, like, I always enjoyed watching your fights too, because I mean, you always took, you were like that go out on your shield type of fighter. I remember when you caught that guy, like Chat Lavender, I think, didn't you you choked the guy out. You had him in 2 submissions at one time, man. Like,
I look at the ref and kept going, he's unconscious. He's unconscious. And the guy's like,
was that you? That's like was that UFC? The all-time?
That was AFC, I think.
Oh, yeah, that was down in Florida.
Was that the?
I got that on DVD.
Because Chris has like one of the all-time great UFC submissions. Who was that against?
I did it twice. One on Matt Brown and what's the guy? The Gizzard Jason Gilliam.
Okay, but okay, and Chat was another one of my guys. But interesting. Anyway. All right,
so. You go from Robbie Lawler. I mean, that's not an easy loss to take, obviously. And you fought your heart out. And, you and Chris definitely do have similar styles. I mean, that's without question. You being a southpaw, though, you do the smartest thing you can do. You always load up on your left hand. It's like you use your power hand as your jab, and you make people continue to walk into it, and you catch them. And I think that's what happened in the Berger fight. But we're at your 24th fight, Alexandre Barros.
Barros, yeah, man.
So Barrios was Marco Ruas's top student, and this is like a reoccurring theme for Aaron. He keeps running into, hey, this is my stud from the gym. Get in there, get that ass. And Alexandre shows up in the UFC later on, but in your corner you got Maurice Smith. So give us all of the background so we understand what took place in that fight, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, the reason why I had Maurice Smith in my corner for that fight. So I was, I had made the move to Seattle. I had the Yves Edwards fight when I was in Seattle. That was like my big comeback fight after the 11-month layoff. The Yves Edwards return fight didn't go my way. Then I think I matched up against Mike Willis, a guy, I don't know, Miguel would know. He was another semi-local tri-state area, I think. Or maybe, I don't know, but he was a hook and shoot guy.
Massachusetts.
Mass, okay. I knew, as soon as I said that about I was like, wait a minute, no. He was from out of town. He was from way out of town. I got the win against Mike Willis, still in Seattle, got the UFC fight, still in Seattle. Then it was that was December of 2002, and Matt, Dan Lambert, I can't remember how that all came together, but Miguel actually kind of was taking over. Miguel was kind of managing my career at that point. He kind of took care of things like when I got into UFC for UFC 37. So Miguel will probably remember how it all. I just know that Lambert had a big desire to see Matt Hume fight again, because Matt Hume hadn't fought for a long time. He fought in Extreme Fighting, 3 and 4, I think. He fought Eric Paulson. He fought Pat Miletich, Eric Paulson. He beat both of them, but then he tore his ACL grappling in Abu Dhabi, and then it was he just kind of disappeared from the competition scene, but he was training fighters and people knew about him, all these gym legends of him smashing everybody. And Hume was Lambert was like, hey, I want to see this guy fight again. So they get him matched up for that inaugural, AFC card in Florida. They get me on it. Another one of the guys from AMC, he kind of finagled his way onto it as well. So we had a crew of Seattle, Seattle fighters on that card. And Maurice, I guess maybe he was cornering Matt, because Maurice didn't have his own fighter. I guess he was helping to corner Matt.
Yeah.
And then, he just jumped in my corner as well to help. And Lance Gibson. Lance, I think, had Ryan the Lion Diaz, maybe. Is that maybe why Lance was there? I don't, Miguel.
I'm looking at the card right now, and I'm going through it, and I think, Matt may have asked for 2 plane tickets because he didn't ask for a lot of money. I'll tell you that. Okay. Mike, from a historic perspective, what we're looking at here is we are looking at the first Florida show for hook and shooting and AFC, and Lambert, with Lambert's cooperation. So at some point here, he'd been helping us with the Indiana shows, and he said, the travel was wearing on his schedule. Could we do the same thing in Florida? And you're right, Ryan Diaz was in the main event against Hermes Franca, so that puts together your guys there. Mike, Wes Sims fought Conan on this fight.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, we actually interviewed Conan Silveira, a couple months ago.
And Alexandre Barros was a Ruas student. He was coming off. He had fought Matt Hughes in the WEF in one of the shows that Aaron fought on. And then after that, he fought Strasser on a hook and shoot. And Strasser is a veteran guy that, I found very reliable and super tough. And then he gets Aaron. So, poor Alexandre Barros got to play the B side on all 3 of his fights in the States.
But at the same time, man, I remember a long time ago talking to Miguel. It was about 3 years prior, or maybe 3 to 4 years prior. And Miguel was talking about what an animal, what a fighter Barros was, because he was like a runner-up in IVC. And then I believe he was a champion in IVC. And for anybody that that's in the mix on this podcast, they know about IVC, the most brutal MMA tournament in the world, probably at that time. I mean, it was, 30 straight minutes, 1 round, 30 minutes, complete bare knuckle, soccer kicks on the ground, stomps, the full 9,
I saw a fight in IVC end with, like, the guy got backed up with running headbutts like this. It was, love it. And if I'm not mistaken, the guy who did it wound up Gleison Tebow. It may have been Gleison Tebow who wound up having a UFC run in the early days. But anyway, go ahead. If not, it was someone that nutty.
The thing about Barros is that, like you said, he played the nail 3 different times. He played it well, but then after that, like, it seemed like either at that point in your career, you either quit and go home and say, babe, this isn't for me. I love you, but I got to get a job. Or you slingshot forward. And that's what Barros did. Barros, he had a respectable career after your fight with him, and certainly not an easy one. From there, you're staying with the hook and shoot. That's kind of like, that's the brand you prefer. I mean, you're obviously got a really good working relationship with Jeff Osborne. And Jeff does you no favor on this one, and he lines you up against lights out Chris Lytle.
That was a tough fight. That was for sure. I don't know.
It was a fluke. Tell me it was a fluke. You got lucky.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't even know what's exactly, I forget like what the rationale for that, or how were they, because Chris and I were both doing things, having success in Indiana earlier on in our careers. And then, we both kind of had gone international by this point. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know what prompted it, or I don't know, like, I don't even remember how it came together, but yeah, I was at AMC at the time. That was like what, March of 2002, 2003, maybe.
Like, Chris, you said you had considered once upon a time maybe making 155, but I think there is a little bit of a size difference between you two. Just throwing that out there for that fight. I think I was the matchmaker on this one, and we built it.
I don't remember how it came together either.
I worked with Chris, and Chris was, already moving on internationally. Aaron also moving on internationally. And there comes a point where we are either going to do international fights or not. And we did book it as the for the Pride of Indiana. It was the way Jeff did the advertising for the number one fighter in Indiana, because you were both from there. But everybody, it was probably a fight that more people in Japan cared about at the time than in Indiana, really. You know what I mean? So it was definitely for that reason. Sorry guys.
In a fight like that, man, we could have fought 10 times and we're probably going to have 8 to 10 different outcomes because we fought the same. It was going to be go in there and bang heads until something happens. So that's just how everything played out that night. But I knew it could have went many different ways. It's how it played out, man. And you never know. But I was, like I said, a huge fan of the style of Aaron. Always liked watching him.
Not. Yeah.
Huh? That's what I mean. If you don't like it, you don't like fighting. So definitely somebody I want to be fighting like. And I was super excited to get in there and beat each other up. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, you did most of the beating that night, man.
Fortunately, I got lucky. It happens. But
yeah, and also, man, I'm gonna have to trademark that quote too and make a T-shirt. If you don't like Aaron Riley fights and you don't like fighting,
that was 100% true.
You know what the unfortunate part is? Like the fanfare of Aaron Riley is just for like us dorks. It's probably the people that go and approach you is probably 90% dudes. About your fight career. It's not easy, but like
Aaron's sneaky with the ladies. Don't
when you look at Aaron's body of work on the independent scene, man, is it impressive. It really is. It's very, very impressive.
I remember hearing Jeff tell a story about I think it was after the Lawler fight where like he was contacted by somebody that wanted to either get you to train his kid or have privates for his kid. And the reason it was noteworthy is you're getting fight or rather job offers coming off a loss. That's kind of I don't know if talent's the right word, but it's something that is important. Is if you can impress in a loss, that gets some miles on there too. And unfortunately, that's what happened in some of those.
Yeah,
the Lawler one was one that how can you forget that fight? So,
well, both him and I lost our fight to Lawler, but I think both of our stock went up after those fights. I think people saw these guys can fight. I liked it because it was a little bit more of that pride Japanese style of, hey, these guys can fight. It didn't matter as much. Some it seemed like you lose, that's it. It doesn't matter. But if you lose like that, people still like you even more. So both of our stock went up in losses. I think it's a good thing.
Right.
It's very rarely do you get both combatants on a podcast, let alone both combatants and the matchmaker. We got all three. Everybody, had their hands dirty in this fight, with the exception of myself.
And I'll tell you, they're all friends here and stuff like that. But before the fight, I think that there was a healthy amount of respect from both guys that there was a little bit of tension. They stayed away from each other. They weren't friendly. Hey, they're sitting around chatting before the fight at that time. And afterwards, the emotions kind of ran wild and the wives kind of got into it for a minute and stuff like that. So, yeah.
The thing is, my sister-in-law is my wife's sister who she tends to get in some problems. All I know is I remember seeing them getting escorted out. That's about right. Southside hooligans from Indianapolis get kicked out.
So the women got into a fist fight in the audience. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know exactly.
I remember a fight.
I think it was actually on the ring apron, if I'm not mistaken.
Aaron, what's your take on this? What's your take on this, Aaron? What's your old lady say?
What do you remember? At that point, kind of, it slowed down. But lucky Aaron's mom didn't get involved. She would have thrown some people around.
She'd have thrown her across the room.
Yeah, man. You never know. No. At that point, I was dating. The funny thing is like at that point, I was dating a girl from Seattle, and she was a kickboxer. She was like one of Matt's prize students, actually. So she just knew that that's the way the ball bounces sometimes, you like in a fight. So, I mean, like she was just supportive and just was like, oh, that sucks. But that's, you know, she knew how that stuff goes. So it wasn't, for us, it was just kind of a rough day, but, you know, you bounce back and, you know, if you're a real fighter, you know, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, train hard and go back and do it again. So
if I may kind of translate what Aaron just said, what Aaron just said for us is that, Chris, your sister-in-law may have fought a ring card girl. It wasn't the girl he was with.
No, I think it was part of that. I think it was part of Aaron's Indiana contingent. I think Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
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 Hey, listen, man. I'm a promoter.
What happened, dude?
I'm a promoter here in the Chicagoland area. I'm just trying to get a rematch. That's all I'm trying to do at this point.
I was there. Let me have my memories, dude. Come on.
So, you know, your 29th recorded fight is against a guy that, in my opinion, doesn't get enough respect, and that's Nuri Shakir.
Oh yeah, Nuri.
In hook and shoot, and you know he and Steve Berger fought twice. They split it 1-1, but even in that first fight, like he had Berger rocked like on more than one occasion. Going into that fight, did you have concerns with his stand-up?
No, maybe I should have, but no, you know what's funny? I saw him fight Thiago Alves about 2 months before that in Florida. And man, he gave Thiago, but see, Thiago Alves wasn't the pit bull that we know today. He was just some young kid from Brazil that I saw, like, so I've come to respect Nuri more like later now. But man, like looking back on it, like, yeah, he fought me like 2 or 3 months after he just took Pitbull Alves to a draw, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe he even beat him on a decision. Really? I mean, I don't recall exactly, but you guys can check that out online real quick. But man, it was a very close fight, and Nuri did really, really well. But man, I don't know. I mean, I just looked at it and was like, well, I'm going to smash him. I don't care what Thiago did. I'm going to knock him out. So that was my outlook on it.
So what of Chris's like famous quotes that dude, it makes me giggle when I hear him come out of his mouth is, you know, Chris will say, you almost have to, in order to be a great fighter, you have to be delusional. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think that comes into play here?
Let me preface that a little bit. Let me I say, no, you have to be able to go out there and lose horribly and just be like, yeah, the next guy, I'm gonna kill those guys. You have to believe you can beat anybody in the world, unquestionably. And I can tell you think the same way.
Yeah, I did, because I don't know, people would say stuff like you know, friends, you watch UFC with friends, and then Mark Kerr would just smash some. I mean, no, Mark Kerr is like the monster in UFC, like 15. And then, you know, buddies from high school I'd watch UFC with, and they'd be like, what if you had to fight him? And then I'd be like, well, I guess he'd get his ass kicked pretty bad. I mean, that's just like how you think, you know?
Yeah, I'll find a way to win, you know, is what you got to think. And people like look at it and you're like, you have to be delusional and believe that. And I think you do, you know? So I don't know how you go into a fight if you don't think you're going to win it. You know what I mean? I'd be scared to death if I didn't think I was going to win, you know? So that's delusional.
So Pride Japan, you fought Michihiro Omegawa.
Yep.
Where does that fight rank in your eyes in terms of your career?
It's the number one fight.
That's what I figured you'd say that.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that and my third fight in UFC, those are kind of a tie, because, you know, the win in Pride was just everything. I mean, you know, it was the typical Japan situation. Chris can completely you understand, and he'll vouch for this. I was up in Seattle, Washington. I flew back up there to hang out with some friends. I was living at that point. I was in Florida. I was living in Florida, but I had gone up to visit some friends. there's this massive festival in Eastern Washington called the Apple Blossom Festival. So we went over to that, and dude, I'm over at the Apple Blossom Festival having a grand old time, like drinking, eating elephant ears at the carnival. Dude, just not thinking.
You're in the
about
wet market. You're in the wet market looking for bats.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm just going nuts. And then the next day, like, that's like it was over the weekend. Then on Monday morning, I'm staying with Dennis Hallman. And then, like, I hear the phone ringing at, like, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning or something. Ooh. And then Dennis Hallman throws the door open in my room, and he just throws a phone, and it hits me. And then, like, he just walks off. And, like, because it's so early, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I just picked the phone up, and it's Laborio. It's Ricardo Laborio down in Florida. And he's so excited he can't even talk. And he's just, by the way, and I said, what are the hell, what are you saying? And he just said, you're fighting in Pride, motherfucker. And I was like, what? Dude, I came out of a deep sleep real quick. I was like, what? I just sat up and grabbed the phone and said, what are you talking about? And he said, you're fighting in Pride. They called, we're going to Japan in like 2 weeks. And I was like, nice. Yeah. So it went from, me partying and drinking beer and eating elephant ears to you got to lose, 15 or 20 pounds and fly to Japan in 2 weeks. Ooh. So, I think it was actually like 10 days. It wasn't even 2 weeks. It was like 10 days. So, that's how I got found out I was going to do the fight. Was pretty much Laborio told me. I mean, I'm completely committed, but yeah, Laborio tells me I'm doing it. And, and what I remember distinctly too about, I get on the plane, I ended up having to fly over by myself. Laborio came later. I get on the plane, I get seated next to this little old Japanese lady. And as soon as she sits down next to me, she starts going, what? And I was like, oh no, she's sick. She's going to get me sick and I'm going to lose. So dude, I cover up with my blanket. I get a blanket and I cover my head under it for the entire 14-hour flight. Cause I'm like, I don't want to get sick.
They really never gave.
At what point, okay, so Laborio calls you and says you're fighting in Pride, you're happy now. At what point after that did you find out how much you were getting paid, and how much were you getting paid?
I didn't care.
Of course, no, I know you didn't. It's like he showed up in Japan, they gave him an envelope. He's like, oh, I forgot about this.
I get paid too.
Yeah, no, I was so amped that, I mean, like, I didn't even care. I mean, that was the highest that I had been paid to that point in my career. I mean, because, they paid more than UFC. That's why everybody wanted to fight there. But yeah, I mean, just that whole thing was just, so surreal. And just the way that, like I said, I'm partying 10 days before the fight. I get the call. All of a sudden, like my dream, just this thing that I always dream of in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, it's reality. Bang, bang, bang. Next thing I know, I'm getting ready to walk down to the ring. And I just remember thinking, I didn't get to train for this as well as I wanted. I know I'm not as in good a shape as I wanted to be in, but you know what? He is going to have to kill me to win. He is going to have to kill me to win, because I did not come all the way over here, and I have not been living my whole life up to this exact moment to lose. I'm not losing. I'm winning, or I'm going to die in the ring. That was my mindset. And I was just, so I guess that had something to do with why I got so tired, but I still found a way to win that fight.
Well, and, let's also talk about how you won.
Yeah. Sometimes the story writes itself,
Yeah. How did you win that fight? I mean, you're in Japan, the mecca of MMA.
Tell it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, so we're going back and forth. Now, this guy, like, I knew he had tremendous judo background, trained by Yoshida. He's super tough. And I'm like, but man, he's got a chin. I keep cracking this kid, and his hands are like down, and it's like bam, right across the jaw. It's like, this is like Little Mac, dude, from like Mike Tyson's Punch Out. He's taking all the shots. I mean, it's like he's like got that Homer Simpson style where he's just like, you're getting tired of punching this guy. But man, I land some good shots on him. He's still there. And I am getting tired because we're like 7 minutes in. You know, at that point, Pride was doing those 10-minute first round, 5-minute second round fights. It's about 7 minutes in, and I throw this punch, and it kind of zings past him. It kind of misses him, and for whatever reason, like the punch misses, but with my other hand, I grab the back of his head and I keep his head down, and then I do like a switch step, like a kickboxing switch step. And I think he lost sight of my foot. And then so I'm holding his head down with one hand, and I let it up. And then as his head starts following up, I follow it up with my foot. And man, it was just picture perfect ending. I kick him right in the jawline. He just crumples to the mat. And that's not good enough for me. I mean, I just jump on him like, you know, I'm trying to make sure this fight is definitely finished. The referee grabs me in a chokehold and is dragging me off. Man, it was just like, there's no way that fight could have been topped, really, in my mind. It could have been like, I guess, a little bit more like back and forth because I was kind of laying waste to the guy. But I mean, as far as just like picture perfect endings, I mean, there's nothing better, no better way for me to have won that fight in my mind.
And how many people were at that event? Do you remember? Was it one of the big ones, 30,000?
That was a smaller arena for Pride, but I mean, there were thousands. There was probably like a solid, like, you know, like, I don't know, 14,000 people or something. It was a big event.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, and you know, like that's kind of like when you were a kid, you said, you know, you're 12 years old going, that's what I want to do. You know, if you're in the World Series, you got a bases loaded bottom of the ninth home run to win. I mean, that's essentially what you did there.
I probably should have just retired from MMA at that point, man, because it couldn't have got any better in my mind.
Go out on the high note.
Yeah.
He didn't though, Chris. He went back to the UFC and he fought Spencer Fisher.
Ooh, yeah, that's good.
That's right. I did. Yeah, if we're going chronological, that's true. I went back in 2007 because this is the thing. I kind of waited around. For Pride to call, and then they didn't. They didn't call back right away, and I was like, well, what the hell? I thought I'm supposed to go over and give a great performance, and you guys are going to call me back. Dude, I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. And in the I didn't have an exclusive contract with Pride by any means. That was a one-fight deal, I guess. So, you know,
you expect to call back. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of waiting, and they never call. And then UFC calls, and they're like, hey, you want to come back to UFC? And it's like, well, I mean, I just had a win in the biggest show in the world. I might as well go get, start, getting wins in the show that, I didn't have a win in UFC yet. So it's like, well, hell, I definitely want to get a win there. So I definitely want to come back to UFC. So that was kind of the driving force for that. No exclusive contract with Pride. Yeah, sure. I'll come back and fight in UFC. That was a one fight deal as well. That was an exclusive contract. That was just a one fight deal with UFC also. So that was a different time frame. They weren't locking people down as much. Yeah, Chris, you remember things were a little bit different back then.
Like you're saying, nobody really had exclusive contracts. I don't understand why. I mean, especially once they figured out exclusive contracts only help them. I mean, if they like you, they kept you and they had you at a cheaper rate. If they didn't, they cut you. So after they figured that out, it was different. But I mean, yeah, you could fight for anybody back in the day. You fight in UFC, Pride, Pancrase, WBC, whatever. I mean, it was a different time, like you said.
Yeah.
Now, Spencer Fisher, you had your jaw broken in that bout again.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first time that my jaw was broken. Now that happened, I believe it was like towards the end of the first round. Now it was weird. Like, again, I'd had injury like the Yves Edwards injury, but when my jaw got broken, it was a way different experience. It was such a weird sensation because I mean, like, I don't know, like, because when I got cracked, it was just off a weird punch too. if somebody didn't know any better and they were watching that fight, they probably couldn't pick out the punch that did it.
Really?
Yeah, it was just a strange little weird tweaky punch. But when it happened, I felt like that the best way I can describe it is I felt like a wisdom tooth in the back of my mouth, like exploded. I was like, what the hell happened to my face? Like, it was the weirdest feeling. But then I took a step back after the punch landed and I opened my mouth and I felt my jaw like physically like separate. Like I opened my mouth and I felt it pull apart and go back together. And I was like, ooh, that's not good.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the wild part is usually when guys get their jaw broke, they tend to either slow down or they wake up and people tell them what exactly just took place. Yeah. Where you never really like missed your beat on it, like it just, you kind of, you dealt with it, but then you went into the corner to figure it out. Do you have a really high pain tolerance as well?
I guess. It hurt. It definitely hurt, but I don't know, man. I guess I just never wanted to be perceived like a wimp or a quitter. So I just always kind of, seriously, those are the thoughts that would go through my head. Like I knew my jaw was broken, but the thought that was flashing through my mind when I was walking back to the corner was Muhammad Ali got his jaw broken. He didn't quit. Because that was like a thought going through my head when I was walking back to the corner, because I knew for certain my jaw was broken. And Howard Davis Jr. was in my corner for that fight. And I told Howard, I said, hey, I think my jaw's broken. And then he kind of like, oh man. So he got the doctor to come over, and then they evaluated it, and then they actually stopped it. I didn't want to stop because again, I didn't want to seem like a wimp.
Now you know your jaw was broken.
Ali didn't stop.
Would you have come out for round 2? Like if the doctor hadn't said anything?
I like in my mind, I felt like I would have. Now later on in my career, it happened again. And then at that point, I was just frustrated and angry because I knew what the recovery entailed. And I was just so disgusted the second time it happened that I was like, the hell with this, throw in like, I'm just done. I was mad and angry because I knew what it was going to consist of at that second time. But going back to this first time, I'm not sure. I just remembered thinking, there was too much. There was kind of so much going on in my head, and you only have a minute to make up your mind. So, it's kind of like, I don't know, like I'm doing this thing on my phone and people keep sending like Facebook Messenger stuff. I hope that's not interrupting, or you guys.
No,
I'm not even noticing.
Yeah. It's killing me. So anyway, but you only have a minute to make up your mind, and I
don't want to joke around, Eric, but the right answer for this question was, of course I wouldn't have come out. I would have worried about my jaw and I would have stopped the fight myself. And you're still 20 years later, 50
you're
years
struggling.
later. So that says it all, my friend.
Yeah. Aaron, you, for the last 2 minutes, you've struggled to figure out whether it is or not. Dude, believe me, you were going back out for round 2 in that fight.
I was going back out, you guys. I was just like, the hell with this. Sure. No, broken jaw be damned. I'm going out and knocking this guy out. So yeah, next question.
Real quick, Spencer Fisher was another one of those guys I really enjoyed watching fight, man. That dude always brought a good fight. He always put on entertaining fights.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chris, I'm surprised you two never matched up, even though, he fought at 70 for a while.
Oh, he's mainly 55, was he not?
When he got to the big show, he was, but on the independent scene, he was up at 70. I think even when he started his career, he was like 200 plus.
What?
So yeah, he came down.
Huh. Yeah, I think that he debuted in UFC against Thiago Alves at 170. He actually
at 170
triangle choked. He triangle choked Thiago Alves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So after that, you're talking about another broken jaw type situation. You kind of dwelled on a little bit. Eddie Alvarez. Was that Anthony Smith in your corner for that fight?
Benji Raddick, and
it was Benji Raddick. It was Benji. I mistook him for Anthony Smith. It is Benji Radek. Okay. Okay. Now that's, I believe, in Costa Rica. Am I correct?
That one was in Vancouver. That one was in Vancouver, British Columbia. We had we got hit with a massive snowstorm like that same weekend. It was pretty wild.
He fought
Daryl
Smith for Bodog, I think, in Costa Rica as a warm-up fight, and then fought Alvarez in the inaugural title fight there in the Vancouver, which was the first pay-per-view there.
Right.
And was your jaw broken in exactly the same place or a different spot?
That second time it happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, we're passing the Alvarez fight and jumping a little bit.
Well, Alvarez, it looked like you had a broken jaw on Alvarez.
No. Alvarez, no. What happened was I got really rocked. And then, but what I did was I was worried about it and I was feeling it out. Even though my brains were scrambled, I still had enough good sense to go, oh, well, is my jaw okay? And then Radek said, hey, is it feel okay? Is it okay? Because he knew immediately what I was doing when I did that. And then I said, yeah, it's fine. And then he was like, oh, okay, good. I mean, whatever. I mean, that's what was going on right there.
Okay. I mistook it for a broken jaw. And honestly, that's what I thought you were talking about. Who do you think you hit harder, Eddie Alvarez or Robbie Lawler?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, but Robbie's bigger, so man, maybe he might. But if you look at their KO ratios, they're both super high. But man, I don't know. Maybe Lawler. It's just Lawler and we got in a clinch, like the typical over under. And Robbie, you know how everybody just clubs away at the sides when you're stuck in that over under. I mean, it looks like it's really kind of nothing. You're just doing it to stay busy. Yeah. Well, Robbie and I were stuck in that position, and he was hitting me with hooks to the body from that little over under. And I was like, damn, even that hurts. So, I mean, that was weird, man. Like, Robbie really, really hit hard.
Yeah. He's a strong individual. I remember I had trying to get him a guillotine. I was on the ground, and he picked me up by my foot and threw me over like that. I was like, okay, he's strong.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go to plan B is going to have to come into play. Plan A is not going to work.
So then, I'm looking at obviously your career here, and Ryan Schultz pops up, and he's certainly somebody that I was shocked didn't make a UFC debut. I think there were some politics that took place with the Ultimate Fighter and him. But Ryan Schultz, I could not believe didn't make a UFC debut, but you fought him with the IFL. How was your experience with the IFL? Was it a short notice fight, or was it something that you had trained for?
Just the one fight.
Was it short notice?
I had time to prepare for that fight.
Okay.
But I feel like looking back at it in the back of my head, I feel like there was maybe a little bit of ring rust. I can't remember the interim, I can't remember how much time had elapsed between
10 months,
like the fight I had before I fought Schultz, but I kind of felt like I had a hard time kind of pulling the trigger. I wasn't just kind of really, because I wobbled him with a head kick at one point. He kind of blocked it, but I kind of wobbled him with it, and I should have kind of followed up a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, I just felt like I just had kind of an off night, and I really wasn't putting things together super well. But he's a super tough fighter, so I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but definitely feel like that was a winnable fight for me. Had I just, been a little more aggressive or played maybe a little smarter game, hadn't given up as many takedowns as I did or something, it was a good fight.
You've fought in a ton of different camps, and I was always surprised that you never showed up over at Team Quest.
Yeah, I mean, it just never kind of came together. I mean, once I escaped the Pacific Northwest, I kind of didn't have a big desire to get back out there. Because, I hated the weather out there, man. I hated it with a passion.
I bet.
Yeah.
Florida's a little better.
I was definitely, Florida was a lot better.
Yeah, for sure, man. And then what about Thiago Minu? He's a black belt from Brazil. under Hermes Franca. I had thought that possibly, you know, that ATT connection may have stopped something from happening, but it didn't.
I wasn't at ATT anymore at that point. Now here's a real interesting side note that you might not even have, you know, a record of there. I had moved to Virginia. I had moved to the state of Virginia, and I was like, I'm trying to remember like what the last fight was before it. I moved up to Virginia.
You had Jeff Gordon. You had Jeff Gordon camp, and then like it was Mark Delagrate was your corner.
Right. Yeah, because I spent time training at Mark's gym. I originally had moved to Virginia because I was looking at pursuing executive protection work, like bodyguarding work. I was going to kind of retire from fighting, but then I kind of got roped into being an MMA instructor because the company that I was kind of working with, they were a little slow on getting me gigs at the time. So I kind of started teaching. I started getting paid better for that. So I kind of just switched over and kind of started teaching, then kind of got the bug to fight again. But I was trying to find a good gym to train at because I had kind of jujitsu guys by themselves, and I had kind of like Muay Thai guys by themselves to train with in Virginia. But there wasn't like, I feel like any really strong MMA school there at that moment. So I kind of did some traveling around and went to a couple different gyms on that side of the Mississippi, I guess. I went to Minnesota for a second and trained at Greg Nelson's and had a good time out there. I went to Matt Serra's then I went to Boston as well. And I don't know, I hit it off with Mark and things went well. So I went up there and trained with Mark to get ready for that Thiago Manu fight. Mark didn't corner me for that fight, but yeah, I had a really good training camp out of Delaware.
Oh, you had a good training camp with Mark Delagrate? Sorry, you broke up, buddy.
Yeah, that's the gym I was preparing for that Thiago Manu fight was at Delagrate's.
And then you make a UFC return after that against Shane Nelson, and I'm going to say a name that I guarantee I'm going to get a reaction of. Referee Rick Fike.
Yeah, you know what's funny is Rick Fike had a scene. You know that movie Warrior? I think it was the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy and all those guys or whatever. Oh, yeah. Well, Rick Fike, it's funny. He played a referee in that movie. And if you ask me, that's the only business Rick Fike ever has being a referee is pretending to be one. Because, man, that was the worst stoppage in the history of UFC. It was pathetic. Anybody that has ever seen that fight, like Rogan's commentary on that is just hilarious, man. Like, it's just, gosh, that was, I mean, it was just awful. I don't know. There's no other way to describe it. And of course, the icing on the, the cherry on top was, he came backstage, as this is kind of the custom at UFC. The referees come back and speak to the fighters that, whose bouts they're going to ref.
Yep.
Now, what did this guy say? Well, he came back and he said, now look, I'll let fights go. I want you guys to fight it out when you're in there. I'm not one of these guys who's going to just jump in and stop stuff.
You're
blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. No, it was like prophetic. It was crazy because he did the complete opposite of exactly what he said. It was ridiculous, man.
He went the pro wrestling route, huh? Yeah, he cut a promo and flopped. Yeah, that was so Chris, to kind of wrap that fight up in a nutshell, bell rings. On the first exchange, Aaron gets cracked. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He gets hit, but it's not like he recovers. No, he got hit and dropped, but was never in trouble. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not like there was like a weird like body movement. None of that took place. I think you were a little off balance.
Well, what happened was I threw a kick. He caught my kick. He threw a punch. I'm standing on one freaking leg, man. Yeah, balance. I'm going to I get knocked down. But here's the thing. I land on my butt and I kind of skidded back. Shane Nelson takes off running. And I turned my back. So, I mean, I don't completely turn my back, but I'm kind of turning to kind of get up off the mat. Shane does a full body tackle. He just tackles me like football. And then that, of course, knocks me face first into the mat. I regained my guard. And by the time that I regained my guard, in the amount of time that he tackled me, knocked me face first into the mat from the initial butt scoot, the ref just jumps in and goes, that's it. That's it. And he just calls it off. And I'm completely clear-eyed. And I just look him in the face from on my back, pull my mouthpiece out, and I screamed, what in the fuck are you doing? And I think at that point, he could probably tell I was kind of losing, I was pretty with it. I was pretty there. Yeah. I wasn't loopy or knocked out.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, you can tell a lot about a fighter, about how they handle adversity. And I'm not just talking about in a win or a loss, but like when a situation like that comes about, the amateurs will be screaming at the top of their lungs, being like emotionally like uncontrollable. But you gave them the "what are you doing" talk, and you went out there and you let Shane get his hand raised, but you were mad about it. And the UFC sees that and they go, wait a minute. He went through with the show. We all know what took place. Anybody with a working retina understands what took place. But at the end of the day, you stood there disappointed and go, okay, go ahead and complete the process. And certain guys don't do that. And, it's to their detriment because, man, there's replay, there's announcers. Anybody with like good vision and knowledge of the sport can see what happened. And did Dana White have a conversation with you backstage after that? Because you also had an immediate, you pretty much rematched him a couple events later.
Yeah, that was my next event. Yeah, I came back. Anyhow, what happened was they recognized, Joe interviewed me in the ring, and I got to give my thoughts on it. The cool thing was Joe Silva kind of did some talking for me, and I was actually paid my win bonus by UFC that night. I got my show bonus. Yeah, so that was really cool. I got paid my show money. I got paid the win bonus, even though, they just, Silva went to bat for me, talked to Dana and said, hey man, come on. That was terrible. Helped the guy out. So Dana was like, yeah, sure. And, so they gave me my win bonus. So that really helped to soften it a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I was definitely happy to be able to kind of exact my revenge on him next time in my next fight in UFC.
Now, you only really had one exchange with the guy, and obviously, nothing was settled. But going into the rematch, did you have like a little bit more confidence because you felt his power and you felt his strength?
Oh, yeah. I had zero. I was not worried about him at all. I was so ready to just steamroll him that I was not. Yeah, you got to have some concern and not just, walk into it. But dude, I was not worried. I was completely confident because I was like, you're not stronger than me. You don't have more power than me. You don't hit hard, because the punch that stopped, that was not, I was very confident, and I just, I wasn't overconfident, but I was just like, dude, I'm going to just blast you.
And let's talk about the elephant in the room. You also broke the UFC curse. You got your win.
Well, yeah, my win. Well, here's the thing.
Well, you beat Gurgel.
Yeah, that was Gurgel was my third.
You know what?
Third fight.
I apologize.
In UFC.
You know what? I don't have that fight written down. I skipped over that fight. You are correct. Yeah. Well, you got your second UFC win. Okay. Stay corrected.
And you went into that Gurgel fight as an underdog too. I stepped away for a second. I thought you had covered it already, but if you missed it, Gurgel was kind of he was
hot prospect.
He was out of Ohio, but he had built up a little bit of a reputation, and he had also trained with guys that you were aware of, like Marcos Aurelio and guys like that from Top Team.
Yeah,
and
George had been on the show. George had been on Ultimate Fighter. He also had that connection with Rich Franklin. Rich used to, as far as I know and as far as I remember correctly, Rich Franklin used to acknowledge George Gurgel as his jiu-jitsu instructor.
He was.
That
he worked out at his gym.
Yeah.
Rafferty as well, who was on the Ultimate Fighter season 1. That was one of Gurgel's guys. Kerry Shaw was one of Gurgel's guys. Like he had like strong style is very, a well-known name in like the Cleveland area, but outside of Cleveland, man, it was Jorge Gurgel. I mean, he pretty much ran Ohio. You got Dustin Ware that's out there as well in the Columbus area. No, it's Ohio was a hotbed for MMA.
It was a good win.
Yeah, very good win. Very good win. And UFC 135, like you're fighting a murderer's row at this point. They put you up with Tony Ferguson.
Right.
Now, very awkward style. Another time where I believe your jaw was broken. Yes, no?
That's right. Yeah,
okay.
It was
there we
the
go.
Fisher fight. The Ferguson
I thought it was
fight.
3. I thought it was 3. My fault. I stand corrected.
Yeah, really, really quick here, Aaron. We'll always give you props for your cardio and stuff like that, right? But now here you're getting closer to the end, and Ferguson's kind of like you're an old school guy. Was he like a 2.0 model? Did you have that feel? Like, was he, or did you feel like if he had broken your jaw, you were in that fight? How do you feel? I'm curious.
No, I felt fine in that fight. And I mean, if I felt like had that not happened, I really felt like I was in some of the best condition. And if you watch the fight again, I mean, I don't feel that I was doing like badly before that.
No.
I mean, I was moving my head and avoiding punches. I mean, earlier in my career, I used to like eat a lot of punches, but I mean, I was slipping. I was like, we were going back and forth. I mean, I feel like it was shaping up to be a great fight. We're still filling each other out and kind of getting rolling. And then that crazy weird uppercut just sneaks in, did the damage. And then, I'm fighting a defensive fight from then on because, I'm just trying to not take more damage and get popped again. So,
Ferguson is, he's special. He's legitimate, like he's just a special fighter. And, what I noticed in that first round was he caught that you were southpaw and he saw that you were loading up. And I'm sure, there's a ton of tape on you as well. I mean, let's not pretend there isn't at this point. And he was starting to adjust to it. But it was just, it was kind of just a strange thing. Like you were 100% in that fight. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Justin Salas.
Well, that's the thing is that was well before Ferguson's run, so that my follow-up is like, how do you feel like watching him go on a run like that at that point? Do you root for him or do you not?
No, I rooted for Tony. I mean, we spoke after the fight. Like he came backstage after and like, he just said, "Hey man, are you doing okay? How you doing?" I just said, "My jaw's a little bit sore," because he knew that like it was broken, so he just kind of like, "Oh, yeah, man, I bet." We just kind of, we kind of hit it off a little bit. So I respected him, and I wasn't angry. It's just the way that it goes sometimes, and I cheered for it. I liked seeing him do well. Because what am I gonna? It's like I don't want him to go out and just get destroyed the next fight because I want him to win the title, man. That makes me look better, right?
Yeah, no, of course. No, it's funny, but and on the day of, you got the whole baggage of fuck. I got to rehab a broken jaw again, man. So it's lots.
How long does that take?
Oh, well, it's the most claustrophobic thing in the world because it's like you get braces basically put on like the iron stuff. And then they run these things through it. So then your mouth is like this and you can't open your mouth. You have to find a way to eat with your mouth closed like this. You have to learn to talk like this. And so just close your mouth and then think, how am I going to eat now? It's crazy.
For how long was it? How long? 6 weeks?
I think that I think it's something like that. It's over a month. And it's just the most claustrophobic feeling in the world as it is, just knowing you can't open your mouth. I started having like an anxiety attack at one point because I was like, oh my God, I can't open. And then I had to like walk myself down from the ledge, man. It's nuts.
You know what's crazy? Chris, you know what's crazy? And I know this podcast is about Aaron, but I'm going to inject a little bit of myself in this. I've seen 3 different people have broken jaws that freaked out so much that they went and removed the wires themselves. They said, I don't care. Are you
kidding me?
No, they just said, I'll deal with a crooked jaw. I can't do it. Wow. They were tired of blending their food and drinking it through a straw. protein shakes, give them diarrhea because you can only have one in a row. You have more than one in a row, you start to get diarrhea. Like it is an ugly process. It
is like a form of psychological torture, man, to go through that. I did an interview with Ben Fulks. He would write. He's pretty prominent MMA writer. And man, he was interviewing people that had suffered that injury, and it's just like, it's not just a physical injury, it's like a psychological injury, man, because like we eat food all the time, right? And there's food that's called comfort food. Why is it called comfort food? Makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Dude, when you can't eat anything, man, you start losing your marbles, dude. It's crazy.
Nuts.
Yeah, the only thing I've ever remotely comparison that I could see was I had a guy have a horrible broken nose. And when he came back from the hospital, the show was still going on. When he came back from the hospital, his nose was packed, obviously, and stuff like that. And they had to put like a stabilizer so that he wouldn't move his head. So he had like screws and
my nose.
A thing. Yeah, it was really badly broken nose.
Wow.
There's David Avalon. He broke it against Anthony Rea. The fights on the internet, it's a bloodbath. But
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you fight with Justin Salas. The one thing that really stands out in that bout is that, again, you've got a legendary corner in Greg Jackson. And and across the ring is Trevor Whitman in Justin's. I mean, both trainers are incredible and have made, obviously, a huge name for themselves in the sport. What was your time like at Jackson's?
It was great. I felt like they had a great team atmosphere there. I loved it out there. I mean, I really, it was a great fit. I always tell people, I always felt like gyms for people were kind of like a pair of shoes, because like there's a million different pairs of shoes because they fit everybody differently. And like MMA gyms are the same, you kind of just find, I don't know, it's like they can be good with coaching and whatever, but if it doesn't fit you, then I don't think it's in your best interest to train there. But I felt like Greg's was a great fit. I just really, Joe Daddy was there a lot. Clay Guida was there at that point. Cub Swanson, Isaac Valley Flag, Melvin Gillard was in and out a little bit and then kind of took off. But those were my main training partners, in addition to just, the up and comers like Landon Venata was up and coming at that point. Nobody knew him at all. At that point, I mean, he was still new. So there were a lot of, it was great. I loved it out at Greg's. Hated New Mexico. I hated Albuquerque, but I really liked the gym.
Yeah, I heard it's a hard place to live.
Yeah, it is.
Well, hey, would you rather live in like Seattle or would you rather live in Albuquerque?
I'd rather just live in the gym and not have to be in the city whatsoever of Albuquerque. I probably would have been better. Maybe I'd go back now because they've got like that. They got those spider dorms now or whatever. So.
And your fight against Steve Claveau, you're fighting out of Joe Stevenson's gym.
Yeah.
And in Steve's corner, he's got George St. Pierre.
He does.
And it's just legendary corner after legendary corner. That's one reoccurring theme in your life. Would you mind delving into that fight before we kind of go into our random questions?
Yeah, just I think I had a new MMA manager at that point. That was when I was in Virginia. That was that time frame. And I was trying to build up and go back to UFC. I think I had the fight at the UWC against Manu, and I think that fight was the one that put me back into UFC for the third time. The win in Montreal, it got me back in against Gurgel. I went. That was my second time in French Canada, the Quebec.
Quebec.
Yeah, I was like, I'm losing my mind here. In Quebec. So I first time fighting, second time being there, and I was in Montreal. The event happened there. It was a great show. It was a really well done promotion. I didn't know anything about Claveau. one of the like an official, I don't know, one of the officials. He comes back to me right before I'm getting ready to walk out to the cage, and he just goes, "Man, this guy you're fighting is crazy. He's crazy guy. He's completely crazy." And I was like, "Thanks, man. Thanks for telling me that. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to do or help or whatever." But yeah, well, I do my ring walk. Claveau comes out next. He's got this devil mask on. He's got this crazy intro he's doing. He pulls the mask off. He's got 666 in red, like dyed into the side of his head.
Yeah, he's a Satanist.
Crazy mohawk. He's nuts, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I go, you know, I'm like, we're going at it. Joe Daddy's in my corner. He's giving me some solid advice. I'm just trying to smash this guy up. I land a vicious elbow from a clinch, cut him. He's bleeding everywhere. You know, I handle the fight from top to bottom. I almost put him out, landed a head kick. I hit him right in the jaw. Same kick that I caught on Miguel with, but this didn't quite put out Claveau. He weathered it. But then after the fight, man, he's just like the funniest, craziest guy. He walks up to me. His nose is like over here. And he just walks up. He goes, "Man, you messed up my face. My girlfriend is so mad at you. Oh, what am I going to do?" And then I don't know, man. I'm just so happy I'm on cloud nine because I win the fight that I know is going to put me back in UFC. And I just looked at him and kind of like hug him. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I don't know.
My bad.
And then, yeah, it was. And then George looks at me and goes, "Ah, my friend, I think you meant to do it." And then I was just like, "Yeah, I guess I was trying to hurt him, George. You got me."
That's a pretty good French accent, man, friend. That's
yeah, it's pretty good for Indiana.
Yeah, like a Pepe Le Pew type feel to it. So what your cardio is like phenomenal. Is that genetic, or do you have a routine that you consistently put yourself through?
I am telling you, man, that's completely genetic. Because hearing my dad tell me stories about how he was the best track runner in 8th grade, I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. I really did. Like, my dad was a hell of a runner, and you know, I don't know if it's like genetic or what, but like, I knew that it just never bothered me. I would train my butt off in the gym, but dude, I don't know. I really didn't get very tired, so I just would suck it up and keep going. So, like, I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. I'm like, I think some of it might be genetic. Seriously.
Yeah, I believe that.
I got a couple, like your UFC run, the final fights in the UFC in that run there. I mean, you were 2008 to 2013, like on their roster and just fighting for them exclusively. And that's pretty much like a golden period for the UFC too and stuff. Did they ever, like, did you win fighter of the night, or did they ever take care of you? I think I remember one time they gave the roster, like everybody on the roster, like iPods or iPads or iPhones or something like that. Why don't you help me out with some of that?
Yeah, so it was a kind of a golden era of UFC ownership, I guess we would say, because we kind of missed it in the mix. That UFC 91 that I returned after the I forgot what the fight was before that, but when I went back to UFC for UFC 91, yeah, that one I did sign a 4-fight deal. Okay, that one I did sign a 4-fight deal, and that fight against Gurgel, that is tied probably with my fight or my
pride
fight because I had to miss my sister's wedding for because I was in fight camp for that. But her wedding was like a week before the fight. So, I mean, I really couldn't, it was really getting crunch time. It was like the serious week. And then the next week was kind of the cruise week. So I said, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring you and your husband to Las Vegas for my fight.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was staying at Jorge Gurgel, or I was staying at, man, I'm obviously punch drunk now. I'm mixing the names all up. I was with Joe Stevenson. So it was like easy because we drove from Victorville. We drove from Victorville to Vegas. It was like 2 hours. UFC enabled me to give away my UFC ticket, my flight, and my corner flight, I gave them to my sister and her
nice.
husband. Yeah. And then I got their hotel room while I was there, and I kind of was fronting a little bit of money or whatever. But it worked out that night when I won, I also won fight of the night. So yeah, man, I was able to kind of give my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, their honeymoon in Las Vegas. So, you know, and I won my third fight in UFC, and I won fight of the night. It was kind of a trifecta. So that was a huge night. That was a great night.
There's a very strong possibility that's the same sister that was thrown down for you back in Indiana at that Chris fight. I'm just saying.
Well, all right. So how long were you with the American Top Team for?
About, let's see, it was 2000, about 4 years. It was about 4 years. I was 2003 to late 2007.
Okay. So now you came from, the question is this, dude. Did you ever see Hector Lombard and Josh Barnett ever like beat each other up in practice?
No, I never saw any of that. I just heard stories, but yeah.
Share one with us. Give us.
Can you give us just one?
Well, I mean, man,
you're friends with Barnett. I know you're friends with Barnett.
Oh yeah, I am. No, I just remember one time. Okay, this is interesting. So this is when I'm living in the gym. Okay, I'm living in the gym at AMC Kickboxing. Okay, and I remember so Josh is dating this girl named Matoka. Okay, and then Josh is kind of giving private lessons to this other girl at the gym named Shannon. Matoka, I mean, she's really pissed that Josh is giving private lessons to this girl, but she's kind of letting it happen. She's, because Josh is making money, he's getting paid to do the lessons, whatever. So I don't know. I know Josh and Shannon just decided that they were going to go to lunch that day together before they did the private lesson. So I'm like, whatever you guys are going to do, go ahead. I mean, like I said, I live in the gym, so just all kinds of people coming and going from the gym all day. So I'm like taking a nap at the gym, and I hear a knock at the front door, and I just wake up and I go to open the front door, but I walk out into the lobby area. The person that's at the front door can see me. There's no way I can get away. It's Matoka. And I'm like, oh no, this is not going to go well. I can already tell. So then I go and I open the door and I'm like, hey Matoka, how are you doing? Where's he at? And I was like, oh, you mean Josh?
Where's who at? Yeah.
And then
who, me?
He said, and I said, I don't know. I think he went to dinner and she went, is he with that bitch? And then I went, yeah, he went to lunch with Shannon. and then she just said, well, that's it. I'm waiting for him. And I was like, oh, okay. I just woke up, man. I don't know what's going on.
Hey, so, he's in the sauna. Yeah.
Dude, so then she goes back to her car. I was glad she didn't force her way into the gym and just say, I'm waiting for him here. She goes back to her car and she's waiting for him. So then my girlfriend, the one that I was talking about from before, Erica, the kickboxer, she comes back to the gym and she's just like, hey, why is Matoka out front? And I'm like, oh, well, that's an interesting story. Let me tell you what's going on. So, dude, it's like a movie. The minute I get done telling Erica the complete scenario about what's going on and what's happening, Josh pulls back into the parking lot with Shannon. But not only are they in the same car, Shannon is letting Josh drive her muscle car Mustang. Yeah, so you guys know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
So then Josh gets out of the car. Matoka is up in his face. He's going. Shannon is getting out, and she starts mouthing off because I think Matoka is saying some stuff about, about her too. And then those two start mouthing. They get in each other's face, and then they're grabbing each other. Josh is pulling them apart, kind of tells Shannon, go back into the gym, go into the gym. So then as Shannon's walking off, Matoka sucker punches her in the back of the head. Erica's going nuts, being like, this is awesome. And she's like looking out the window, and I'm like, no, get away, don't do it. Oh man, we got to don't get involved in this. And then Shannon comes back in. I hear then Matoka goes ripping ass out of the parking lot. Josh comes in, and he's just like, Wah! He punches a hole in the wall. He picks up a ring stool, throws it across the room. And then he round kicks the door, and he's just destroying everything. And I'm just like, I'm not stopping him. I'm just standing here. Yeah. And then finally he stops. And then he calms down and whatever. Eventually, that situation sorted itself out. But what was funny was later that night, Matt comes to the gym 3-4 hours later, and then he's in there wandering around because he would always come and stop by the gym. It was right by.
You're talking about Matt Brown? Matt who?
Matt Hume.
Yeah. Oh, Matt Hume. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and he comes in, and then he's like, he starts looking around the gym, and he's like, why are there 2 holes in the mat? Why is there a broken ring stool over here? And then I'm like, well, that's an interesting story. And then I kind of sort of start telling him what happened. Then he looks at the wall. Now, I didn't mention that there was a really rare picture of Matt when he competed in Pancras that he had plastered on the wall. That just so happens to be the place that Josh punched through the picture and punched into the drywall.
Yikes.
Yeah, Matt sees that, and then he's just like, did Josh do this too? And I said,
maybe.
I think that was Matoka.
So. Yeah, I should have thrown her under the bus, man.
Or who me? You always got to go the who me defense at that point. You know, who me?
So what you're telling me is Josh and Matoka are now married happily, right?
Yeah. Definitely, they worked it all out. 5 kids. It's going great.
Is that Shannon Hooper?
Yes, sir. I knew that Miguel would come. Yes.
He swapped.
He swapped. Yes, he did.
He stayed with the training partner is what he did.
The muscle cut.
So where does Hector Lombard work his way into this story?
That's way later. That I don't. But I also heard.
It's just a Josh had it rough.
Poor Josh.
We're in, but go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. So no, I mean it's just. But the comical thing to me was Matt was so furious about what had happened. He just started talking. It's like he was talking to me, but he wasn't really. He was talking to himself, and he was just saying, "Well, I'm going to make Josh." He was just reading off this litany of stuff. Well, I'm going to make Josh fix the wall, and I'm going to make Josh get a hammer and break his own window out of his car. I'm going to make Josh do this. I'm going to make Josh do that. I mean, he was losing his mind that Josh came in and disrespected the dojo like that. And I mean, I get where the guy's coming from, but it was just, man, it was the most weird situation for me to get stuck in the middle of, because again, I'm 19 and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, that one would have been better to watch and not participate in. But let me ask you this, Aaron. And this is kind of a spur of the moment question, but when you look at it, I remember when you fought in the early days in Okinawa, and Jeff came back with a really long video of you training with Boss Rutan and stuff. So then when we look at Boss, we look at Matt Hume, Laborio, the guys that you've trained with across the board and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on these? Who's the best one? Come on. Don't go freezing on us now.
Come on.
We kind of got a little bit of a freeze, but I'm thinking where you were going there was who was the best coach, right?
Yeah, who was the best? Chest to chest. Who
for you?
Who'd you learn the most from, or who impressed you, or who would you want to fight the least?
Wow, man. Okay, straight out of the gates, I would never in a million years want to take Laborio on in jiu-jitsu because he would just flat kill anybody. I saw him just fold Jeff Monson up one time. Man, I just could not believe what I was seeing. I mean, I saw Jeff Monson compete in Abu Dhabi and give all these guys this amazing run. And then I saw Laborio just training with him one time, and I was like, oh my God, this is not real. This is like the Matrix. or something different, like what I was seeing happen. Like, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then Laborio for whatever reason, he decided he wanted to spar with me and Dean Thomas one day. We were in the ring. We were in there sparring with each other. And Laborio was like, I am going to spar with you. I'm going to train with you guys. And I was like, all right, that's cool. And then all he would do is get in and kind of move. Then he would just pin us into the cage. And then the next thing you knew, like, my feet would just disappear out from under me. And then I was getting submitted. And I was like, why does this keep happening? Like, I don't know why it's happening. Like, that was just strange, how good he was at jiu-jitsu. Matt was super well-rounded. Greg didn't train, like, with the guys a lot. He was mostly coaching. But, man, just all those guys had some amazing abilities. I mean, that's why they're in those coaching positions. I mean, Delagrati, like, they all had things that were just, you know, above and beyond in a certain way. You know, I was just fortunate that I was able to call each and every one of them like a coach at a point in my career, you know. All right.
So you gave them all props. So now who's your favorite?
I mean,
you haven't answered the question yet.
Okay. It's weird, man. Like,
it's just like you said, it's a shoe. Like, what shoe fit best for your foot? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's no disrespect to anybody. Like Conan,
the one that I haven't mentioned yet.
Who's that?
Howard Davis Jr., who was in my corner. He was like my boxing coach, and we just got along real good. And he always Howard Davis is you know, this Dia Davis's father, you know, African American guy, and he would always call me. He always called me his white son. I mean, I don't know why he just would say that out of the blue. And then he would always just, I don't know. He just took a real liking to me, and we always got along real well. And I don't know. I had a great relationship with Howard. I mean, it was just I had a great relationship with him, and I got along with Greg Jackson really, really well. Greg's got this real gift though. Greg connects with everybody. I mean, Greg is like just the most, you know, affable, personable guy. He connects with everybody. You know, so it was like those two guys I had a real good connection with, for sure.
And, you know, with Howard Davis, for people who may not know, you're not talking about a slouch.
He's an Olympian.
You're talking about gold medal boxing coach, you know.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Howard Davis is special.
3 times.
And rest in peace also to Howard.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any Hector Lombard stories from the American Top Team? He's our favorite guy.
Even if they're secondhand, come on.
Come on, bro.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, there you go. I mean, you know, if we're gonna go down that route, then definitely. I mean, who doesn't have a Hector Lombard? We're gonna go that route. I guess one time I heard, because, you know, I still would talk to Mike Brown and some of the guys from ATT. I see them around. I guess too, or JZ Calvin, as he's known in Japan. I don't know, but anyhow, I guess one day they were getting ready for sparring at ATT. Now, I guess Hector went up to JZ. I mean, Hector again is like what, 205, right? Is what he fought at, 205.
205, 185, but he's huge. Jack.
Yeah, and then JZ is like 55. JZ's wrapping his hands and they're talking. JZ's not even looking at Hector really. He's talking, but, you know, he's wrapping his hand, and then I guess Hector asked a question. JZ said something and then kind of laughed. And I guess Lombard didn't like his joke, so he just drew his fist back and he hit him in the face, like hard. And I don't like that. Again, that second hand, I forgot who told me that. But, dude, I guess that's just the way the guy was all the time in the gym. Like, he just couldn't really be controlled. He just, you know, I don't know.
You know what's so weird about this is I've met him a couple of times just doing the bare knuckle stuff, and he's always been the nicest guy in the world to me. I don't know what it is. He's like, "Hey, Chris," he starts talking. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be a lunatic? But he's always nice to me. I don't get it.
That's the other thing. I think I've met him in passing a few times.
Yeah,
great guy. I mean,
yeah,
but then you hear these stories.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here, what about Thiago Silva?
See, here's the thing with the ATT stuff. I kind of made my exit right when all the crazy stuff started going on. Like for me, it's Jeff Monson stories. And man, I am not kidding you guys. We got to do a whole separate podcast if we're going to do Jeff Monson stories, because I've got hours of stuff, like just hours. I mean, because you got to remember, you guys got to remember, I was with Jeff at AMC for 3 years. Then I was with Jeff at ATT for 4 years. So I've got more Jeff Monson stories than anybody.
Hey, Chris, do you know what we refer to this as? A cooperating witness. That's what we refer to this as.
An investigation. We have to get to the bottom.
We might have an investigation on Monson. It's 100% accurate.
We got Alex Davis in an interview, and he told the Monson story about the Wizinator. But I got a feeling you're going to tell a little more racy story. So why don't you hit us with one?
Just one.
Let's see. Gosh, man, I don't even know where to start with Jeff.
I can give one that is a common story just to get you thinking. I was a matchmaker of a Jeff Monson fight in Brazil, and Aaron was on that show too. Aaron also fought down there.
Yep.
And Jeff was married, and he brought his girlfriend with him to Brazil, and
not his wife.
No, not his wife, and that's the problem, because
he left her at home on accident.
Because, at some point we are videotaping the fights. It's not like it was televised or anything like that, but we're videotaping the fights. And he brings his girlfriend in and introduces her to the Brazilian crowd as his wife. So it doesn't go well for him after that. But anyway, that's the kind of nonsense we're about to hear, I think.
Well, yeah, he would always do stuff like that. But one of the things that I remember, I distinctly remember too, was Jeff got me hooked up with a great chiropractor. Like there was a chiro that okay, I got to tell this story to lead into that story. So one time I was supposed to pick Jeff up from the airport. Luckily, he was on time for a change. I mean, that's like, everybody knows that about Jeff. If you want him there on time, you got to tell him to be there 2 hours before you want him to be there. So I picked Jeff up from the airport, and I go to pick him up. And he's just laying on the ground reading the book, like at the turn, like out by the ground. He's like, well, my back went out on the flight. And I didn't realize how bad this guy's back would go out. But he was like, you got to help put me into the truck. And I was like, okay. So I go to start helping him stand up off the ground. But he's like, no, you got to, I'm like having to pick the guy up like a baby and put him into the car. And it's, in case you guys know how big Jeff Monson is.
He's huge.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that Abu Dhabi trip. I don't know if you remember, my brother was there with us helping out. And my brother was there. He actually had to ride, and Jeff lay on the floor in front of him in his seat because he couldn't sit for that long of a trip. So my brother actually put his feet on his back. That's mostly flying around and stuff.
Wow.
But what happened was so Jeff's like, you got to take me to the chiro. So I take Jeff to the chiro, and I just drop him off, and then he gets picked up by somebody else and whatever. But the guy's fine the next day. He's walking, he's completely fine. I'm like, damn, I got to give this chiro a look, So anyway, Jeff's like, yeah, sure. Next time I go, I'll bring you. I'll take you over there. And I was like, okay, cool. So we're in his car. And we're driving over there, and he says something about the brakes are really shot on this car. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, thanks for the heads up, whatever. And then we drive into the parking lot of the chiropractic office, and dude, he just straight crashes into a dumpster. He's grabbing the emergency brake, and he's he slows it down from 50 to 25 maybe, and he just plows it straight into a dumpster. And the car bounces up, and you pitch forward in the seat, and I hit the dash. I'm like, Jeff, what the hell? Why'd you do that? He's like, I told you, man, there's no brakes in it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then so then we get adjusted by the chiropractor. Then we're driving back home. And this car is a complete piece of crap. I forget what it is, like a Pinto, multicolored piece of junk with the upholstery's torn and hanging and swinging from the seat. I mean, it's complete crap. And you know, everybody in Florida, South Florida especially, I mean, you know, this Escalades, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, BMWs, and Jeff's driving a car with no brakes. So he's like, dude, if we hit a car, I'm just going to get out and run, just so you know. And I was like,
sounds logical.
For the heads up, dude. Thank you. So here, we made it home. We made it home in one piece. He drops me off at the gym or something. So, dude, then like a month later, I see Jeff pull up and he went out of town, probably chasing a girl, whatever. Comes back in the town in a completely new vehicle. And he comes in, and I was like, Jeff, what happened to your old car? And he just said, oh, I sold it to one of the Brazilians. I don't know, some Brazilian, I guess, had a car that no brakes. Who knows what happened? But,
wow.
Just, you know, it's always something with Jeff, man. Like, but yes, as far as the girlfriend stuff, yeah, he was all over the world. He he had this elaborate scheme where he was like buying postcards from other countries, but then he would mail them somehow to where it made it look like he was in England, but he was really down the road, like with some other girl, and he was mailing them to his wife throughout the week or something, throughout the month. And he would stay with his girlfriend. He was always doing something.
So you had mentioned that you trained up with Miletich for a while.
Yeah.
How was the okay, so the rumor, I'm from Chicago, that would always come from that area was that it was an absolute shark tank, and that the minute you got there, they really tried to hurt you. Like there wasn't a lot of learning, like on your first few days there.
You know, I could maybe agree with that. They weren't so bad with me. I didn't feel like, I mean, when I sparred with Pat though, I mean, we would try to just knock each other out. So, I mean, like I could hold my own like fairly well. Like Horn, like we would go hard. We would go at each other, man, pretty good. I remember one night, I saw Horn choke out Rick Gravison. That's an old school guy. Like I bet, like you guys have been around, man. You guys might remember that name from the Extreme Challenge guy. I saw one night Horn caught him in like the latest time was an arm triangle, and Horn put it, and he said tap, and Gravison said nuh-uh, no way. And so Horn just put him to sleep. He said that was the third time that night he had put Gravison out. Like I just happened to be standing there for it. That was the third time he did it in one practice, man.
I think, was it Gravison a Wisconsin guy?
What's that?
I know I met him in Wisconsin. I'm not sure. I thought Gravison may have been from that state.
He lived in Iowa when I was there.
Okay.
I mean, Strasser was a Wisconsin guy, I think, right?
Yeah.
And maybe Adrian Serrano.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wow.
No, that's very interesting stuff there. Miletich is another one of those guys like Hume, Miletich. You know, they fought actually, you know, but you really had access to some of the greats out there and stuff. So, Mike, what do you got?
Nah, man, dude, this guy's answered everything. What about Conan Silveira? What was your opinion of him as a coach?
I didn't really get coached by Conan so much because, okay. When I first got to ATT went right after the, I guess we'll just call it the incident, right? Where him and his brother went away on a hiatus for a little while from MMA. So, Conan had already gone away by the time I made it to ATT. His brother was on some kind of a weird, like suspended type thing where his brother hung out for about 1.5 years after I got there. Then his brother went away for some time. Then he came back later.
That's the federal process. You plead guilty and then you wait, and then you do your time. It's weird. Yeah. And I mean, I might be speaking out of context here, but I'm going to say it anyway. That guy got set up. Both him and his brother, 100%. I've read a few of the court documents. They were set up. Through and through, they got set up.
I know nothing about it, honestly. I know nothing about it. Guys at the gym back then would speculate on it. And they were like, oh, we don't really know what happened. Oh, we think maybe they were just like looking for some adventure in their life and wanted to they don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about it.
I respect Conan is like one of my favorite old school guys. Like, you got Harold Howard, you got Tank Abbott. Like, I really love that era of fighting. And Conan, I hold with great reverence, both as a coach, fighter, and as a person. And Chris and I had the incredible opportunity to interview him about a month and a half ago. And he gave us a phenomenal interview. Like, he came in with his wife and kid, and it was like, I hear Portuguese, and he's telling them, I'm not spending more than 15 minutes here, don't worry. And I'm like, I look at Chris, and I'm like, all right, let's go through the questions. And by about the fifth question, he told his wife and child, I'm doing this whole interview. So, I mean, I was incredibly gracious to have that opportunity. So I really, he's one of my favorites. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I didn't have tons of experience with him, but what I did, he was a good dude. And I mean, I have to say, from the time I was at ATT, it was funny because when I was at ATT, those guys had been around fighting in the sense of they were around it in Brazil, but they were all jiu-jitsu guys first, okay? And I had been trained by Matt Hume at this point. So I already kind of knew about mixing martial arts pretty well because I had spent 3 years with Matt before I went to ATT. So sometimes Laborio would want to do stuff, and I would kind of speak. Well, I didn't argue with him in front of people, but I just mean sometimes privately I'd be like, hey, Laborio, this is a dumb idea. Why you want to do this? And then he was like, no, that's what we were going to do because I said, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right. I mean, they had some really weird ideas in the early stage, but I think that those guys have really rounded themselves out as great MMA coaches now. But man, in the early days, we kind of were winging it and figuring it on the fly. There was some stuff that used to go on sparring wise that you just think, oh my God, I'm glad that stuff doesn't go on anymore. Some people may die, but
Miguel, do you know what we're ignoring? We are completely ignoring Benji Radek, Dennis Hallman, and the hijinks that must have took place in Washington. I mean, he gave us some Monson stuff. But I hung out with Benji Radek at one of Randy Greenman's shows, in Belleville, Illinois. That's a cool dude, man. That's a cool guy. I like Benji a lot.
Benji's good people.
There was Benji, I think he was cornering somebody here in Costa Rica, and in the after-fight party, he took a dive. He didn't make it in the after-fight party. He took one of these and fell down. And the reason I bring it up is because if you remember, Aaron will remember Mario Rinaldi, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, Rinaldi was about 5'6" and 5'6", 270. Walked by with one hand, grabbed Benji. Benji was 200 pounds, big. One hand grabbed him by the belt, just lifted him up like a suitcase and walked off with him, man. That was one of the last times I saw Benji, I think.
Do you keep in touch with those guys?
I have not talked to Hallman or Radek in quite a while, but through mutual friends, I can kind of keep up and hear what's going on with them. I mean, I haven't seen those guys in a while, but
we gotta get Hallman on here.
Yeah. Oh, if you want some stories, man, you guys better allot 5 hours if you want to get.
Yeah, I mean, we're 3 hours in. Were you at the Benji Radek fight where he fought the ex-boyfriend of a girl he was seeing?
No, I saw that. Man, it's weird. I kind of missed out on a couple of the things by a couple months here and there. But yeah, that was ugly. I mean, I saw the video of that, and I remember when it happened. And man, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was that was bad. I felt bad for Benji on that, man, because
I did too. So let me give you a little hindsight, and my information might be wrong. Benji's dating a girl. Ex-boyfriend says, I can beat him up. Benji takes a fight outside of the UFC where he is a top prospect. I think the contract for the guy, and I might be off, is $1 to show, $30,000 to win. And the guy knocked out Benji with the first punch.
Yeah, Benji.
How far off am I? And I'm going back from a 15-year-old memory. I
don't know about monetary stuff. I think there was a thing about $1. I don't know if they paid him $30,000. They might have paid him $1,500 or a couple thousand or 5,000.
It was up there. It was up there.
I mean, because I know they definitely didn't expect him to win. But I remember what happened was Benji was showboating so bad. he put Floyd Mayweather to shame with the showboating he was doing. And he like leg kicked the guy and then dropped his hands and was just sticking his face out. And I think it was like off of a leg kick. The guy just kind of like blindly just threw a straight right. And man, he just got him right in the jaw. It was so ugly. Man.
I think the only other correction is I don't think it was an ex-boyfriend in any way, shape, or form. I think it was a current boyfriend.
Yeah, I think it was a new boyfriend. Yeah, to think about it, maybe.
The dude was still dating a girl, and Benji got in there a little bit and got threatened. They threatened to beat him up and stuff. So he had emotion on his side. But the thing about it is Radic was genuinely a prospect, and the problem with it is that this is all psychological now. You know what I mean? And he really, I think that's where that affected him.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of crossover stories with Dennis Hallman and Jeff Monson. Real quick for you, a couple of them. Like Jeff, they would always like battle with Jeff back and forth. And Jeff, I mean, Hallman would just try to do the most crazy, nasty. Like they got like a dirty baby diaper from one of Dennis's kids, and they got like a broom handle, and I like shoved it way down in Jeff's seat, so that he like wouldn't know where it was coming from, and just like the stink was driving him nuts, and he couldn't figure it out. They broke in his car one day when he was at work, when he used to work as like a state psychologist or something, somehow or another. They pulled the seats out of his car, they unscrewed them and took them out, and he had to like put a 5-gallon bucket in his car and drive home sitting on that. They said they caught a possum and they set it loose in his car one time, and then cool.
Wow.
But the best thing that they ever did, in my opinion, was Jeff was gone and his wife was gone, and somehow or another they stole his keys, or they knew a way into his house, or whatever it was. Dennis used to surround himself with like lots of like little follower guys. So Dennis got several of his disciple MMA followers. They grabbed Monson's entire living room suit, his sofa, his love suit, his like easy chair, his entertainment center, his TV. They had a ladder or something. They hauled all of it onto the roof of Jeff's house, and then they arranged it in the exact same order that it was in his house. And then he got home that day from work, and he saw his entire living room suit on the roof of his house.
Wow. That's elaborate. That's too much time.
It's very dangerous.
It's fun because the funny thing is, if I know Jeff is going to be like, first of all, freaking out. But then he's probably going to call Hallman for help, like he does.
Or just go sit up there.
No.
Yeah. That's Oh man! Well, thank you, Aaron, dude. Thank you very much,
Aaron.
Man.
Love you, brother. Aaron,
catching up.
What a pleasure.
Aaron, we can't thank you enough. I know we've taken 3 hours of your day. Hopefully, it's been as fun for you as it has been us to go down memory lane. True legend, pioneer of the sport. One of the guys everybody always wanted to see fight for a reason, because you always the name of the game is entertainment. And you definitely did that. So appreciate it and thank you.
All right, man. Thank you guys for having me. It was a blast going down memory lane, and I'd love to do it again sometime. It was fantastic.
Hey, brother, I got one kind of semi-serious question to close here, because we've been asking. We recently did Keith Wisniewski and Steve Berger, and those are guys, similar cloth to you there. So looking back at it in training and in fighting and stuff, you got 2 broken jaws. How many concussions do you think you got?
Not really sure. I mean,
I'll tell you, Keith said 150 because they trained hard, but he figured he had about 150 concussions. And Berger, I asked him over under at 10, and he said over.
Okay.
Over under.
I'm not a good judge of that, in the sense of I really don't know what measuring stick we're using to measure, because I have heard that every time you get hit and you see stars or you see a flash of light, that's a minor concussion. If that's the case, I don't know. Maybe I have thousands. I mean,
when you get the white flash, what?
Has it affected you?
No, I mean, I feel like no, I don't feel like it's affected me at all. I mean, I don't feel like my speech patterns have dropped off. I mean, no, I know next week I'm not going to be able to do math or talk and slobber on myself. But like, dude, I mean, so far cumulatively, it seems like it has not. I've just been fortunate that I've not been affected in any way that I'm noticeably by any of it. I did go to the Cleveland Clinic in Vegas. Or whatever, that study through the Cleveland Clinic where they were studying the brain stuff. I went to them initially one time. I think I did a follow-up with them a few years later. I would love to reconnect with them, but I'm not really in Vegas anymore and whatever. I would love to follow up with them and see like the longitudinal study, they call it, I guess, when it's over that course of time. I would love to see if I've dropped off or I've done worse or just whatever. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I still am able to speak, add, and kind of remember some stuff from the past. You saw earlier, I could kind of remember dates and whatnot.
Crazy.
So,
real good.
No, you're doing. I'll tell you the same thing I told Steve, dude. You're doing great, and that's a good thing. You know, some guys weren't that lucky, but don't miss an opportunity if you can reconnect with the clinic or whatever it is. Don't miss an opportunity to help yourself, because when you were fighting, you didn't learn head movement until late. You know, help yourself now. You didn't back then. You know.
Right. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I really just grapple these days. I know that Lytle's familiar with that nice guy submission crew, Bobby and Dave and the crew. So I mean, I really just do a lot of grappling these days, man. I don't really look to go out and get my brains. You know, you can't unscramble scrambled eggs, so I kind of try and keep that sparring at a very like a real minimum. I don't really do much of that these days.
So do you own a gym now?
No. I'm actually going to school right now. Maybe looking to get involved in maybe being like a teacher, or awesome. Is what I'm kind of leaning towards. So I got to be able to like keep some stuff halfway in order.
You said you said nice guy. That's Joe Baez, isn't it? Joe Baez.
Yeah. Joe and Warren Brooks, are like they started.
So you're back in Indiana.
Yeah, back. I'm actually in Evansville right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Bobby Evans and those guys.
What's that, Chris?
Bobby Evans and those guys.
Yeah. They kind of inherited the gym, or they kind of stepped up and took it over when Joe and Warren like weren't kind of doing it anymore, or they were ready to take a break or whatever. And now it's Bobby and Dave. And man, they're really doing big things. Bobby's competing in some really big grappling in EBI and a lot of big grappling matches, man. Those guys are really solid and they're really doing some good things.
So you've been trained by some of the greatest fighting minds that the world has seen. I mean, you really have. You've had that fortunate opportunity. It kind of makes me sad that you're not taking a little bit from all of these places and kind of planting a flag somewhere. And I would love to see that. Like that's my respect for you. You know, that's where it comes from.
Well, thank you. I mean, I did have like a small, like when I was in Northern Virginia, I was kind of coaching guys and we had some real success. We had some very good, there was a strong established amateur scene in Northern Virginia. They utilized full pro UFC rules, which was the funny thing, but we had some really good success. I moved away from Virginia, came back to Indiana, about 4 years ago or so. But, I love helping the guys at Nice Guys. So maybe, there is a guy that's fighting, I think at like 135, 145, named Nathan Manis. Currently,
he's good.
Yeah. So, we've got guys that are UFC caliber that are coming through in training at Nice Guys. So, they're looking at doing some bigger things here in the future, like as far as like gym wise. So I don't know. I mean, I'm connected with those guys. So maybe we'll, I'll kind of sort of be doing things there.
Yeah. So Nathan Manis, Chris and I work for B2 Digital, B2 Fighting. And Nathan Manis came up through our system. So he came up through our system.
He had a fight for us right before he went to the big show. So.
He had like 3 fights for us. Got the title and got the call from one of our shows. And so we're real familiar with him. Yeah, you guys got a lot going on for sure. Cool. Well, Aaron, man, always been absolute pleasure. And we took over 3 hours of your time, and we sincerely appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Hey, I just had a good time. I had a good time chatting and just reliving those stories with you all, man.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Definitely a walk down memory lane was definitely good. And, one of those things where it's like, I owe you a lot, man. Thank you very much.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.